Hello everyone, and welcome to the DXD Tales. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Issei was born with the power of Rimuru Tempest. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. Awakening Predator. Death came for Issei Hyodo at the age of 7. He remembered the water closing over his head, the burning in his lungs as they filled with liquid rather than air. The summer sun fractured into a kaleidoscope of light through the pond's surface as he sank deeper. His small body unable to fight against the weight of his waterlogged clothes. He had only wanted to retrieve the toy boat that had drifted too far from shore. Quote, analyzing current status. Oxygen levels critical. Bodily functions failing. Host death imminent. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, clinical and precise within his fading consciousness. Not his mother calling from the shore. Not his father who had stepped away to take a phone call. Not his own thoughts as panic gave way to a strange, distant calm. Initializing emergency protocols. Activating unique skill. Predator. The water around him began to shimmer, its molecules breaking apart and flowing into him rather than drowning him. Issei felt his body changing, becoming something simultaneously solid and fluid as the pond's water flowed into and through him. The burning in his lungs ceased. The panic faded, and as his vision cleared, he realized he could breathe, not air, but the water itself. Processing it through a body that no longer required conventional respiration. Status update. Critical functions stabilized. Host survival probability. 99.7%. Unique skill. Predator successfully activated. When they pulled his body from the pond 12 minutes later, the paramedics declared it a miracle. The boy had been submerged too long to survive without brain damage, yet here he was, conscious, alert, and seemingly unharmed. His parents wept with relief and gratitude for their son's impossible survival. Only Issei knew the truth. Something fundamental had changed inside him. And he was no longer alone in his mind. 10 years later, Issei sat cross-legged in his bedroom, a glass of water balanced on his palm. His eyes closed in concentration as his breathing slowed to an almost imperceptible rhythm. Begin analysis, he whispered. Commencing molecular breakdown, responded Great Sage, the voice in his mind that had been his constant companion since that day at the pond. No longer merely clinical, it had evolved alongside him, developing what Issei could only describe as a personality, analytical and precise, yet possessing a dry wit that often surfaced at unexpected moments. The water in the glass began to tremble, then rise in a thin column before breaking apart into floating globules that orbited his hand like tiny satellites. Each droplet separated further into component molecules that Issei could perceive not with his eyes but with an internal sense that Great Sage had helped him develop. Molecular bonds weakening. Oxygen separation proceeding at optimal efficiency. Hydrogen isolation complete. Issei opened his eyes to observe his work. Where once there had been water, now 3 distinct elements hovered above his palm, 2 small, brightly glowing orbs of hydrogen and 1 slightly larger sphere of oxygen. He had been practicing this particular manipulation for weeks, gradually decreasing the time required while increasing the precision of his control. Current separation time, 3.42 seconds. Improvement of 0.76 seconds from previous attempt, Great Sage informed him. With a gentle exhalation, Issei allowed the elements to recombine, reforming into water that flowed back into the glass without spilling a drop. These exercises had become his daily routine, stretching the boundaries of his abilities in private, away curious eyes that might question what a seemingly ordinary high school student was doing manipulating matter at its fundamental level. I still can't get past water, he sighed, setting the glass aside. More complex substances remain difficult. Host's abilities continue developing at an accelerated rate, Great Sage countered. Current progress exceeds projected timeline by 22.7%. Recom. ND increasing complexity gradually to avoid energy depletion. Issei rose and stretched, bones popping as he worked out the stiffness from sitting motionless for over an hour. His reflection in the bedroom mirror showed a fairly average Japanese teenager, brown hair that perpetually refused to stay combed, warm honey-colored eyes, and a lean physique that belied the unusual composition of his internal organs. Only through Great Sage's constant monitoring and adjustments did he maintain a completely human appearance. The truth was far more complex. His baseline humanity remained, but beneath the surface, portions of his body could transform into a slime-like state at will, allowing him to absorb, analyze, and occasionally replicate materials he encountered. Great Sage had theorized that his near drowning had activated dormant abilities linked to something called unique skills, though the origin of such powers remained mysterious even after years of research. His phone buzzed with a message, breaking his contemplation. Matsuda. Dude, did you see the new transfer student? Total knockout. Meeting at the usual spot to discuss. Asterisk. Issei smiled faintly. His friends remained predictably obsessed with the female form, their adolescent hormones driving much of their behavior. He had once shared their one-track mindset, but nearly drowning, and subsequently developing an analytical OND consciousness, had matured him considerably. While he certainly appreciated feminine beauty, the crude objectification his friends engaged in felt increasingly juvenile. Your associates continue to display behavior patterns inconsistent with your own psychological development, Great Sage observed. Probability of diverging social paths, 87.3% within the next academic year. They're still my friends, Issei replied aloud, having long ago abandoned feeling self-conscious about speaking to the voice only he could hear. Besides, normal teenage interests help me blend in. Maintaining appearance of normalcy, strategically sound, Great Sage conceded. However, data suggests minimal social value in continued association. Issei gathered his school bag and headed downstairs. His moth, R, was in the kitchen preparing lunch boxes, humming softly as she worked. I'm heading out early, he called, snagging a piece of toast from the table. Mrs. Hyodo turned with a smile. Already? Yo, you've been getting up earlier and earlier these days. Meeting someone special before school? She wiggled her eyebrows suggestively. Just getting some exercise, he replied, which wasn't entirely untrue. His morning routine now included a 5-kilometer run followed by practicing manipulations in the secluded wooded area near the school, abilities that required increasing amounts of privacy as they developed. Well, don't forget your lunch, she handed him a neatly wrapped bento. And Issei, your father and I are proud of how serious you've become about your studies lately. Your last report card was quite impressive. Another benefit of having Great Sage, homework had become trivially easy, though Issei was careful to maintain believable grades rather than sudden academic perfection that might raise questions. The morning air carried the crisp scent of early autumn as Issei jogged along his usual route. Huo town was beginning to stir, shopkeepers raising shutters and early commuters waiting at bus stops. He increased his pace as he approached the wooded area that served as his private training ground, checking his watch to ensure he had sufficient time before school. Anomalous energy signature detected, Great Sage suddenly announced, causing Issei to halt mid-stride. Northwest direction, approximately 87 meters. Supernatural entity present. This was new. While Great GE had occasionally detected unusual energies throughout his life, confirmed supernatural entities had been rare. Most had been brief, fleeting signatures that disappeared before Issei could investigate. Classification, he asked quietly, adjusting his path toward the indicated direction. Analysis incomplete. Yokai-type energy patterns predominant. Threat assessment minimal. Recommend cautious approach for data collection. Issei moved through the trees with practiced silence, his footfalls cushioned by the subtle manipulation of his body's density, another trick he'd perfected over years of experimentation. The signature grew stronger as he approached a small clearing where morning mist still clung to the ground in wispy tendrils. There, perched on a low-hanging branch, sat what appeared to be a small fox with 2 tails. Its fur gleamed silver in the dappled sunlight, and its eyes, far too intelligent for an ordinary animal, followed the movements of a butterfly with predatory focus. Subject identified. Lesser Kitsune, juvenile, Great Sage informed him. Approximately 3 years of age. Spiritual power undeveloped but significant potential present. Issei watched, fascinated. His first confirmed supernatural entity, proof that the strange abilities he possessed weren't isolated phenomena. According to Great Sage's theoretical framework, such beings shouldn't exist in standard reality. Yet here was evidence that the world contained far more than most humans perceived. The kitsune suddenly stiffened, its head swiveling toward Issei with ears perked forward. It chit-erred a series of sounds that carried the unmistakable cadence of language rather than animal noises. Partial translation possible, Great Sage noted. Subject is expressing surprise at being detected by a human. I'm not exactly a regular human, Issei said softly, taking a careful step into the clearing. The kitsune's eyes widened, twin tails bristling. It backed along the branch, making more complex sounds. Warning issued. Subject preparing defensive measures. Before Issei could respond, the kitsune exhaled a small blue flame that shot toward him with surprising speed. Acting on instinct rather than conscious thought, Issei activated Predator, his hand momentarily shifting to a translucent blue-green state as it intercepted the flame. Instead of burning him, the flame was absorbed directly into his altered flesh. Issei felt the foreign energy course through him as Great Sage automatically began breaking it down into analyzable components. Fox fire successfully absorbed. Magical properties being catalogued. Primary composition. Spiritual energy with combustible manifestation properties. Replication possible with sufficient practice. The kitsune froze, its small body trembling as it stared at Issei with what could only be described as shocked disbelief. It chattered rapidly, the sounds becoming increasingly agitated. Translation. Impossible. Humans cannot devour magic. What are you? Issei took another step forward, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just curious. The kitsune didn't appear reassured. It bunched its muscles, preparing to flee. When Issei had an idea, concentrating briefly, he managed to recreate a tiny version of the blue flame the creature had produced, allowing it to dance above his palm. Look, he said, offering the flame as a gesture of something. Understanding, respect. He wasn't entirely sure himself. The kitsune's fear transformed into fascination. It crept forward along the branch, nose twitching as it examined the replicated fox fire. After a moment of apparent deliberation, it leapt down from the tree and cautiously approached Issei, still maintaining enough distance for a quick escape. Up close, Issei could see patterns in its silver fur that seemed to shift and change like flowing water. Its eyes contained swirling galaxies of amber and gold, far too complex for any ordinary animal. Current probability assessment. Subject is evaluating host for potential threat or alliance, Great Sage informed him. Recommend offering additional demonstration of non-hostile intent. Issei slowly knelt, bringing himself closer to the kitsune's level. I've never met anything like you before, he said honestly. But I'm not your enemy. My name is Issei. The kitsune tilted its head, then produced a series of melodic sounds. Translation. Humans call me Silver Step. I guard this small territory. You are strange for a human. You taste of something ancient. Before Issei could respond, the kitsune tensed suddenly, its gaze shifting to something behind him. Without warning, it darted away, disappearing into the underbrush with supernatural speed. Additional ENTITY approaching from eastern perimeter, Great Sage warned. Different energy signature. Classification. Devil type supernatural. Issei rose quickly, turning to face this new presence. Through the trees came a figure he recognized, Kiba Yuto, a second-year student at Kuo Academy known for his popularity among the female students. Except now, Great Sage was identifying him as something distinctly non-human. Hyoto-kun, Kiba called, looking surprised to find him there. You're out early this morning. Just getting some exercise before school, Issei replied carefully, studying the blonde boy with new awareness. According to Great Sage's analysis, faint energy patterns emanated from Kiba that no ordinary human should possess. Same here, Kiba said with a pleasant smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I didn't know you used these woods for training. Probability of coincidental encounter. 1.7%, Great Sage calculated. Subject likely dispatched to investigate anomalous energy from fox fire usage. Recommend caution in disclosure. Issei matched Kiba's casual demeanor. Just trying different routes. Keeps things interesting. Kiba nodded, his gaze sweeping the clearing with subtle assessment. Well, we should probably head to school soon. The first bell will ring in 20 minutes. They walked together, maintaining light conversation about classes and clubs while Issei's mind raced with implications. If Kiba was truly supernatural, a devil, according to Great Sage's classification, what did that mean for Kuo Academy? Were there others? What was their purpose in attending a human high school? Subject exhibits controlled energy suppression, Great Sage noted. Physical capabilities enhanced approximately 340% above human baseline. Defensive capabilities unknown. Recommendation: gather additional data before revealing awareness of supernatural status. As they approached the school gates, Issei noticed a striking red-haired girl watching their arrival from a third-floor window. Even at this distance, Great Sage detected powerful energy radiating from her. Secondary devil entity identified. Power level substantially higher than first subject. PR. Obability assessment. Leadership position within organizational structure. Note: unusual interest in host detected through prolonged observation patterns. The day proceeded with superficial normalcy. Though Issei now viewed his school through transformed understanding, Great Sage identified two additional devil signatures: Kiba's frequent companion Kaneko Tuju, a petite first year with unexpectedly potent energy, and the school idol Akano Himahima, whose power contained unusual dual properties that Great Sage couldn't fully classify. By afternoon, Issei had compiled substantial data suggesting that a significant supernatural presence operated openly within Kuo Academy, apparently undetected by ordinary humans. The implications were staggering. He was so preoccupied with these revelations that he almost missed the girl waiting by the school gate after classes ended. "Excuse me, are you Issei Hyodo?" she asked, her voice soft and melodic. Issei turned to find a pretty girl, with long black hair and violet eyes regarding him with apparent nervousness. She wore an unfamiliar school uniform consisting of a dark red jacket with a green skirt. Energy signature detected, Great Sage immediately warned. Classification: Fallen Angel, concealing true nature through powerful illusion. Threat assessment: significant. Despite the internal alarm, Issei maintained a neutral expression. "Yes, that's me. Have we met before?" The girl fidgeted with the edge of her skirt, the picture of adolescent shyness. "No, but I've seen you pass by on your way to school. My name is Yuma Amano. I was wondering if you might want to go out with me this weekend." Analyzing behavioral patterns and physiological indicators, Great Sage reported. Deception confirmed. Subject displaying artificial nervousness. True emotional state indicates predatory intent. Recommendation: strategic engagement to gather intelligence on motivation. Issei considered his options quickly. Rejecting her would likely drive this fallen angel to seek another approach, potentially endangering others. Accepting would place him at risk but might reveal valuable information about these supernatural entities and their interest in him specifically. "I'd like that," he replied with a practiced smile. "How about Sunday afternoon? We could meet at the Central Plaza around 1 o'clock. Relief flooded Yuma's features. "That would be perfect. Thank you for accepting." She bowed slightly before departing with a cheerful wave that didn't match the cold calculation Great Sage detected in her energy patterns. Prediction: 98.2% probability of hostile intent, Great Sage stated once she was out of earshot. Entity likely dispatched to assess or eliminate host. Defensive preparation advised. "If they're targeting me specifically, I need to know why," Issei murmured. "What would supernatural beings want with me?" Insufficient data for conclusive analysis. Potential factors include detection of predator ability, proximity to devil faction at school, or random selection as territory enforcement. The next few days passed intense preparation. Issei intensified his private training, focusing particularly on defensive applications of his abilities. Great Sage helped him develop rapid absorption protocols for various energy types they might encounter, based on the limited samples own the kitsune and observations of the devils at school. Sunday arrived with clear skies and pleasant autumn temperatures, perfect weather for a date that might end in attempted murder. Issei dressed casually but chose clothing that allowed maximum mobility, with a light jacket that concealed several small items he might need to improvise with. While Predator was his primary defense, he had learned the value of contingency planning. Yuma arrived at the meeting point precisely on time, wearing a cute pink dress that emphasized her youthful appearance. The disguise was flawless to human perception. Only great sage's analysis revealed the powerful entity beneath the illusion. "Thank you for coming," she said with a smile that almost reached her eyes. "I was worried you might change your mind. Why would I pass up spending time with a pretty girl?" Issei replied easily, matching her performance with his own. The date proceeded with textbook predictability. They visited a clothing shop where she tried on outfits, had crepes at a street vendor, and walked through a park while making innocuous small talk. Throughout it all, Great Sage monitored her energy patterns, noting fluctuations that corresponded to growing impatience beneath her cheerful facade. As afternoon faded toward evening, she guided their wandering toward an isolated fountain in the park's center, a location strategically distant from potential witnesses. "I've had such a wonderful time today," she said, turning to face him with an expression of practiced sweetness. "Would you do something for me to commemorate our first date?" "Of course," Issei replied, bracing internally for what might come next. "Would you die for me?" The facade shattered like glass as her appearance transformed. Black feathered wings erupted from her back. Her clothing dissolved into a revealing leather ensemble that barely covered strategic areas, and her innocent expression twisted into cruel amusement. Her height increased, proportions shifted to more mature dimensions, and the air around her crackled with malevolent energy. "Energy spike detected," Great Sage reported unnecessarily. "Transformation complete. True identity confirmed. Fallen angel. Combat class. Name analysis from linguistic patterns suggests Rainer. Threat assessment upgraded to critical." Issei maintained a deliberately shocked expression, playing the part of a stunned human while internally activating his defensive preparations. "Yuma. What's happening? What are you?" Rainer laughed, the sound sharp and without humor. "Poor little boy. Yuma doesn't exist. My name is Rainer, and I've been ordered to eliminate you before you become a problem." Light gathered in her hand, forming a spear of crackling energy. "Nothing personal. Jew. Saint following orders regarding your dangerous sacred gear." Sacred gear analysis. Incorrect assumption, Great Sage noted. Subject believes host possesses conventional supernatural weapon rather than unique skill, predator. Tactical advantage. Preserve misconception. "I don't know what you're talking about," Issei protested, backing away while ensuring his stance allowed for rapid movement. "I'm just a normal student." "That's what they all say," Rainer replied with mock sympathy. "But we can sense the power within you, even if it hasn't awakened yet. Better to eliminate you now than face you later." She hefted the light spear. "I'll make it quick as a thank you for the crepes." The spear hurtled toward his chest with lethal velocity. Instead of dodging, Issei made a split-second decision based on Great Sage's analysis. He allowed the spear to strike him directly while activating Predator throughout his torso. The light weapon penetrated his body, but instead of causing catastrophic damage, it entered a semi-fluid state that Issei had carefully prepared. The spear's energy began to disperse inside him, its component particles broken down and absorbed by Predator's unique mechanics. Light element successfully captured, Great Sage confirmed. Composition analysis proceeding. Energy conversion at 72% efficiency. Rainer's triumphant expression faltered as she watched attack disappear into Issei's body without producing the expected fountain of blood. "What? That's impossible." Issei looked down at the hole in his shirt where the spear had entered, revealing unbroken skin beneath. He raised his gaze to meet hers, no longer bothering to mask his true nature. "That was very educational. Thank you for the demonstration." Absorbed energy stabilized, Great Sage announced. Light element replication available at 40% intensity. Issei extended his hand, concentrating on the newly absorbed energy patterns. A small, flickering spear of light formed above his palm, crude and unstable compared to Rainer's weapon, but recognizably similar. The fallen angel's wings flared in alarm. "What are you? Humans can't. This isn't. You're not in any of our intelligence reports." Current threat assessment indicates subject preparing for retreat, Great Sage advised. Recommendation. Limited demonstration of capability to gather additional information before subject escapes. Issei allowed the light spear to dissipate. "I have questions, Rainer. Who ordered you to kill me, and why do they believe I have this sacred gear you mentioned?" She hovered several meters above the ground now. wings beating rhythmically as she maintained distance. "You're not human," she accused, ignoring his questions. "What faction are you with? Why weren't we informed?" "I'm asking the questions right now," Issei replied calmly. "Why target me specifically?" Rainer's expression shifted from shock to calculation. "This changes everything. Lord Azazel must be informed immediately." Without another word, she shot upward, wings propelling her rapidly into the darkening sky. Issei considered pursuing her but dismissed the idea as unnecessarily risky. He had gained valuable information and a new energy type to analyze, success enough for one encounter. Threat temporarily neutralized, Great Sage confirmed. Light element properties cataloged. Sacred gear reference requires further investigation. Probability of follow-up encounter, 94.7%. Issei was examining the hole in his shirt when he sensed another presence approaching. Great Sage immediately identified the newcomer as the red-haired devil he had observed at school. "Well, this is unexpected," said Rimuru as she stepped from a glowing magical circle. "I sensed a fallen angel's energy signature and came to investigate. But it seems you've handled things rather impressively on your own, Issei Hyodo." She wore the Kuo Academy uniform despite it being Sunday, her crimson hair flowing in a breeze that seemed to affect nothing else around them. Power radiated from her in controlled waves that Great Sage measured as significantly more refined than what Rainer had displayed. "Grimori-senpai," Issei acknowledged with a slight bow. "I suppose I shouldn't be surprised to find you're involved in all this." Devil entity exhibiting leadership patterns, Great Sage noted. Territorial behavior indicated by response to fallen angel presence. Subject appears to possess prior knowledge of host identity. Rias raised an elegant eyebrow. "You don't seem particularly shocked to discover the supernatural world. Nor by my appearance here." "Fascinating." She circled him slowly, examining the undamaged skin visible through his torn shirt. "Even more fascinating is how you survived a direct hit from a light spear, fatal to humans and devastating even to devils." Issei met her analytical gaze with his own. "We seem to have mutual questions, Grimori-senpai. Perhaps we could exchange some answers." Subject displaying interest and confusion, Great Sage reported. "Current psychological assessment suggests genuine surprise at host's abilities rather than premeditated encounter." Rias smiled, though her eyes remained calculating. "Indeed. I came here expecting to find a dead human with endormant sacred gear that I would resurrect into my peerage. Instead, I find something far more interesting." She created another magical circle beside her. "Would you join me at our club room to continue this conversation more comfortably?" Transportation magic detected, Great Sage warned. Destination unknown. Strategic risk assessment. Moderate to high. "I prefer to walk," Issei replied diplomatically. "Lead the way, and I'll follow." Disappointment flickered across Rias's features before her pleasant mask returned. "As you wish. Though I assure you, you would have been perfectly safe." They walked in contemplative silence, Issei using the opportunity to observe how Rias's magical energy interacted with the environment, data Great Sage eagerly compiled for future reference. The school grounds were deserted on Sunday evening, their footsteps echoing in empty hallways as she led him to the old school building. The Occult Research Club room defied expectations. Despite the worn exterior of the building, the interior featured luxurious furnishings, antique furniture, velvet curtains, and ornate woodwork that spoke of significant resources. Candles provided most of the illumination, casting dancing shadows across book-lined walls. Kiba and Kaneko were already present, both watching Issei with newfound wariness. Akano entered shortly after, carrying a tea service with graceful efficiency. "My peerage," Rias explained, gesturing to the others as she settled onto an elegant sofa. "My loyal companions and the core of my household here in the human world." Devil societal structure detected, Great Sage observed. Hierarchical organization with feudal characteristics. Subject holds leadership position with others in subordinate roles. Recommend caution in negotiation posture. Akano served tea with practiced elegance, her perpetual smile revealing nothing her thoughts as she placed a cup before Issei. "How interesting to have you join us, Hyodo-kun. Bushu has been watching you for some time." Issei accepted the tea, allowing Great Sage to analyze it before taking a cautious sip. "Nothing harmful detected." Standard black tea with unusual energy infusion. Properties suggest enhancement for supernatural constitution rather than human physiology. I've sensed something unusual about you since you enrolled, Rias confirmed, crossing her legs in a deliberately casual pose that nevertheless commanded attention. Initially, I believed you posse. SSED, a dormant sacred gear of significant potential. Your survival tonight suggests something far more interesting is at play. Sacred gear reference repeated, Great Sage noted. Priority research topic identified. Current contextual analysis suggests standardized supernatural ability classification system. You keep mentioning this, sacred gear, Issei said. The fallen angel used the same term. What exactly is it? Rias appeared genuinely surprised by his question. You've manifested abilities without knowing what they are. Remarkable. She leaned forward, her expression intensifying. Sacred gears are powerful artifacts created by the biblical God and bestowed upon certain humans. They manifest as abilities or weapons unique to their wielder. She gestured toward Kiba, who materialized an ornate sword from thin air. Sword birth allows Kiba to create demon swords with various properties. Each sacred gear has different powers, and some, called Longinus, have the potential to kill gods themselves. Analysis indicates partial match with host abilities, Great Sage reported. However, significant discrepancies in manifestation mechanism and fundamental properties. Host ability. Ties appear to operate on different principle entirely. And you believed I possessed one of these sacred gears? Issei asked, carefully maintaining a neutral expression. We were certain of it, Rias confirmed. Our intelligence suggested a powerful sacred gear dormant within you. The fallen angels apparently reached the same conclusion, hence their assassination attempt. She studied him with increasing curiosity. Yet what you displayed wasn't any sacred gear I'm familiar with. The ability to absorb and potentially redirect attacks is exceptionally rare. From the window ledge, Kaneko spoke for the first time. Her voice flat and assessing. You smell wrong. Not human. Not devil. Not angel. Her nose twitched slightly. Something else. Unusual sensory capabilities detected in smaller subject, Great Sage noted. Possible non-devil secondary classification. Recommendation. Limited information disclosure to assess reaction. Issei set down his teacup. I'm human by birth. My abilities manifested after a near-death experience as a child. I've been developing them privately ever since. Fascinating, Rias murmured. A spontaneous manifestation outside the sacred gear system would be unprecedented. She leaned back, tapping one finger against her lip thoughtfully. Regardless of their origin, your abilities make you a significant asset, and potentially a target for multiple factions. Her expression shifted to one of practiced beneficence. As the devil overseeing this territory, I can offer you protection through membership in my peerage. You would be reincarnated as a devil under my family name, with all the benefits and responsibilities that entails. Proposal analysis complete, Great Sage stated. Subject offering supernatural transformation with hierarchical incorporation. Assessment. Potential power increase with significant autonomy reduction. Recommendation. Decline without creating hostility. I appreciate the offer, Issei replied carefully. But I prefer to understand my existing abilities more fully before considering such a fundamental change. Perhaps we could establish a more limited alliance instead. Information exchange would benefit us both. Rias couldn't quite hide her disappointment. I understand your hesitation, though the offer remains open. A cooperative arrangement could indeed be beneficial, particularly given the fallen angel's interest in you. She rose gracefully. For tonight, I suggest you return home and rest. We can discuss specific arrangements tomorrow. As Issei prepared to leave, Akeno approached with a small paper bearing a complex magical circle. If you encounter any supernatural threats, this will allow you to contact us immediately. Consider it a gesture of good faith. Analysis indicates standard communication magic with secondary tracking function, Great Sage observed. Recommend keeping item isolated until further examination can be conducted. Issei accepted the paper with appropriate gratitude, tucking it into his pocket rather than his wallet where he carried more personal items. Thank you for the explanation and the tea. As he departed the old school building, Great Sage detected another energy signature, one concealed far more effectively than any they had encountered thus far. It vanished before precise identification was possible, but its brief impression suggested Power significantly beyond both Rias and Raynor. Unidentified entity displaying advanced concealment capabilities, Great Sage reported. Classification inconclusive but consistent with yokai-type energy patterns. Insufficient data for threat assessment. Recommend heightened awareness during return journey. The night air felt charged with new possibilities as Issei walked home. In a single day, his understanding of the world had expanded exponentially. Confirmation of supernatural factions, evidence of organized hierarchies, and hints of complex political dynamics that humans remained blissfully unaware of. "We need more information," he murmured as streetlights flickered to life around him. "These devils know more than they're sharing, and the fallen angel's interest suggests additional complications." Assessment correct, Great Sage confirmed. Priority objectives identified. Research Sacred Gear System for comparison with Predator ability. Analyze light element absorption for replication efficiency improvement. Investigate territorial boundaries between supernatural factions. Develop countermeasures for Devil and Fallen Angel abilities. Issei nodded, mind already plotting multiple research vectors. The encounter with Raynor had demonstrated both the potential dangers of his situation and the remarkable effectiveness of his adaptive abilities. The light spear he should have killed him had instead become a resource, a pattern he intended to replicate with each new challenge. Unknown to him, golden eyes watched from the shadows between buildings, tracking his movement with predatory intensity. The observer's two black tails swayed gently as she maintained perfect stillness otherwise, her supernatural senses detecting the anomalous energy contained within the seemingly ordinary human. "How interesting," Kuroka whispered to herself, lips curving in a satisfied smile. "Something new has entered the game. Something that tastes of both everything and nothing." Her sensitive nose caught traces of his unique scent. Not quite human, not quite anything else she had encountered in centuries of existence. She had come to Kuo tracking rumors of devil activity, seeking information about her sister's whereabouts. Instead, she had discovered something potentially far more valuable, a power that even her highly developed senses couldn't properly categorize. As Issei turned the corner toward his home, Kuroka slipped deeper into the darkness, already planning her next move. Such an unusual entity required careful approach and assessment. If her instincts proved correct, he might represent an opportunity she had long awaited. Back in his bedroom, Issei sat cross-legged on his bed, eyes closed as Great Sage projected their findings into his mind's eye. The light element they had absorbed from Raynor's attack displayed fascinating properties, self-sustaining energy that required minimal input to maintain once formed. With practice, he might replicate not just the spear but potentially other light-based abilities. Begin compilation of observed supernatural classifications, Issei instructed. Cross-reference with historical mythology and analyze for consistency. Processing request, Great Sage responded. Preliminary categories established. Devils, organized hierarchical structure with peerage system. Weakness to light-based attacks, fall. Angels, light manipulation abilities with physical manifestation as black wings. Yokai, Japanese supernatural entities with varying abilities based on animal characteristics. Issei nodded, absorbent. The information as Great Sage continued constructing a framework for understanding this newly revealed world. Whatever had awakened within him 10 years ago had prepared him for this moment, the disc. Ovary that he existed in a reality far more complex and dangerous than most humans ever perceived. Tomorrow we begin systematic investigation, he decided, opening his eyes. Starting with the school's devil faction. Great Sage's response carried a tone that might almost be described as anticipation. Assessment. Host evolution proceeding optimally. Current trajectory indicates significant potential for growth in supernatural ecosystem. Primary advantage remains unidentified nature of predator ability outside established classification systems. As Issei prepared for bed, he wondered what other entities might be watching from the shadows, calculating their approaches just as he calculated his responses. The world had suddenly expanded into a multidimensional game board with players he was only beginning to identify. He welcomed the challenge. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, The Dragon Within. Dreams came to Issei that night. Dreams of fire and wings, of battles across skies that bled sea. Rimson against unfamiliar constellations. Enormous scaled creatures clashed above landscapes scorched by their fury, mountains crumbling beneath the impact of their massive bodies. Through it all pulsed a rhythm like war drums, a heartbeat both alien and strangely familiar. "Mine," whispered a voice like grinding mountains. "Mine is the dominion of flames. Mine is the conquest of skies. Mine is the pride of dragons." Issei watched through eyes not his own as claws the size of buses tore through armored flesh, as wings that could eclipse the sun unfurled against storm clouds charged with magical energy. The exhilaration of battle sang through veins that carried fire instead of blood. "I am Ddraig," the voice proclaimed. "Why Ddraig Gok, the Red Dragon Emperor, the Welsh Dragon, Heavenly Dragon, and you, Strange One, are not my typical host." The dreamscape shifted, flames receding to reveal an impossible space, a void that somehow contained consciousness. Issei felt himself regaining autonomy, awareness crystallizing separate from the battle memories. "You speak directly to me," he observed, his own voice echoing strangely in this mental construct. "I didn't know another consciousness existed alongside Great Sage." A massive reptilian eye opened before him, vertical pupil contracting as it focused. The iris burned emerald green with flecks of gold that swirled like galaxies. "I have always been here," rumbled Ddraig, "sealed within the sacred gear you were born with. But you are different. Your consciousness fragments and reconstructs itself. The analytical entity you call Great Sage has been interfacing with my dormant awareness for years. I found it curious. Host's unique physiology detected interaction pathway previously inaccessible to conventional sacred gear wielders." Great Sage's familiar voice interjected, manifesting as patterns of blue light that contrasted with Ddraig's crimson radiance. Dragon consciousness integration now possible at unprecedented levels. The massive eye blinked slowly. "Indeed, most hosts require near-death experiences or extreme emotional catalysts to establish even basic communication with me. Your liquid existence allows something far more intimate." Issei considered this revelation carefully. "You're the source of the power that fallen angels sought. The sacred gear isn't a separate ability, it's you." "Correct," Ddraig confirmed. "I am sealed within the boosted gear, one of the 13 Longinus class sacred gears. In most hosts, it manifests as a gauntlet with the power to double their strength repeatedly. But you," a sound like amused thunder rolled through the void. "You are not housing the boosted gear in the conventional sense." "Analysis complete," Great Sage announced. "Sacred Gear H has been partially absorbed by Predator system. Dragon consciousness preserved independently while power mechanics have integrated with slime physiology." "Partially absorbed?" Issei questioned. "Our unusual constitution began dissolving the conventional sacred gear structure years ago," Ddraig explained. "Instead of forming the traditional gauntlet, my power has been diffusing throughout your malleable body. The entity you call Great Sage has been systematically categorizing and incorporating aspects of dragon energy into your evolving physiology. That explains the heightened thermal stance and enhanced regenerative properties previously classified as advanced predator functions," Great Sage noted. "Dragon energy integration approximately 37.4% complete." Issei absorbed this information with growing excitement. Not only did he have his evolving predator abilities, but he apparently contained one of the legendary powers these supernatural factions coveted, albeit in an unconventional form they wouldn't recognize. "Can I access your power consciously now that we're communicating?" he asked. The great eye narrowed thoughtfully. "Not in the traditional manner of boosted gear wielders. But our merged state offers alternatives. Your predator skill has been steadily incorporating my essence, creating something neither dragon nor slime but a hybrid of both." "Demonstration available," Great Sage offered. The dreamscape transformed again. Issei found himself standing in a visualization of his own body's internal structure, a complex network of flowing channels where conventional organs should be. Throughout this system, crimson energy pulsed alongside the blue-green of his baseline abilities. Dragon energy pathways established throughout 43.8% of host physiology. Great Sage explained as red lines illuminated across the structure. Primary concentrations in defensive systems and energy processing centers. Current applications include enhanced thermal tolerance, accelerated regeneration, and rudimentary energy projection capabilities. Ddraig's voice surrounded them. "You won't manifest the boosted gear as a gauntlet or armor as traditional hosts would. Instead, Your entire body becomes a vessel for my power, more efficient in many ways, though less conventionally recognizable. The visualization zoomed into microscopic level, showing individual cells that contain swirling patterns of draconic energy intertwined with Issei's base composition. This hybrid state grants advantages neither dragons nor humans typically possess, Deidraig continued, undisguised fascination coloring his ancient voice. You can adapt my abilities to your particular needs rather than being constrained by the sacred gear's standard manifestation. A most unusual partnership. Issei studied the visualization with growing understanding. So instead of the traditional boost ability doubling my power, I could potentially apply dragon energy selectively to enhance specific functions. Precise assessment, Great Sage confirmed. Targeted application possible with sufficient practice. Recommendation: establish baseline dragon energy manipulation protocols separate from conventional predator functions. The massive eye blinked slowly. Your analytical partner grasps the implications quickly. Though I have been sealed in countless hosts over millennia, this arrangement is unprecedented. We three consciousnesses operating in concert could potentially evolve capabilities beyond what any faction might anticipate. The dream began to fade as morning approached, the mental construct losing cohesion as wakefulness intruded. Before the connection dissolved completely, Deidraig's voice echoed one final warning. Be cautious, unusual host. My presence within you will draw attention from beings far more dangerous than that fledgling fallen angel, including one who has particular reason to despise me. Morning sunlight filtered through half-drawn curtains as Issei opened his eyes. The dream conversation still vivid in his mind. He sat up slowly, examining his hands as though seeing them for the first time, vessels containing not just his strange Predator abilities but the power of an ancient dragon deity. Deidraig, he thought experimentally. I am here, the rumbling voice responded immediately. Our connection persists in waking consciousness. Another unusual benefit of your liquid physiology. Three-way communication protocols established, Great Sage added. Dragon consciousness successfully integrated with existing awareness framework. Issei rose and began his morning routine, mind racing with implications and possibilities. The devils at school, would they be able to sense Deidraig's presence within me? High probability, Great Sage confirmed. Dragon energy signature distinct from conventional supernatural classifications. Previous concealment relied on dormant state of sacred gear. Active communication has increased energy output by 27.3%. They will sense something, Deidraig agreed. Though your unusual constitution masks much of my presence, they will detect dragon energy but likely misinterpret its manifestation. Issei nodded, adjusting his school uniform before heading downstairs. Then we use their assumptions to our advantage. They'll expect conventional sacred gear abilities while we develop our unique hybrid capabilities privately. His mother greeted him with her usual cheerfulness, completely unaware that her son now hosted three distinct consciousnesses: human, analytical entity, and ancient dragon deity. The normalcy of breakfast with his parents felt surreal against his expanding understanding of reality's true complexity. You're looking particularly energetic this morning, his mother observed, setting a plate of food before him. Just excited about a new project, Issei replied truthfully. His parents exchanged pleased glances, interpreting his comment as referring to schoolwork, rather than developing supernatural abilities. As he walked to school, Great Sage and Deidraig continued analyzing their unusual partnership, constructing theoretical frameworks for integrating dragon energy with predator functions. The process felt natural despite its complexity, three distinct minds operating in seamless concert toward shared goals. Host approaching school perimeter, Great Sage noted. Multiple supernatural entities detected within facility. Recommendation: maintain standard behavioral patterns while gathering additional data. They'll be watching you more carefully after yesterday's events, Deidraig warned. The Devil Princess will have questions about your encounter with the fallen angel. Issei nodded slightly, maintaining an outwardly casual demeanor as he passed through the school gates. Almost immediately, he spotted Kiba waiting with practiced nonchalance near the entrance. The blonde devil straightened as Issei approached. Good morning, Hyodo-kun, Iba greeted with his customary politeness. Bushu asked me to escort you to the club room before classes. If you don't mind, of course. Energy analysis indicates increased alertness despite casual demeanor, Great Sage observed. Subject prepared for potential hostilities. Recommendation: cooperative compliance while maintaining defensive readiness. Sure thing, Issei replied easily. I was hoping to continue our conversation from last night anyway. As they walked toward the old school building, Issei engaged Great Sage and Diedreg in silent conversation, planning his approach to this meeting. He needed to establish certain boundaries without antagonizing potential allies, particularly given the demonstrated interest from multiple supernatural factions. The Occult Research Club RO.OM appeared different in morning light, less gothic, more practical, though still infused with subtle magical energies that Great Sage diligently catalogued. Rias sat behind an antique desk, while Akin-O stood at her customary position slightly behind her king. Kaneko occupied a corner chair, watching Issei with the same unblinking intensity as the previous evening. Thank you for joining us, Issei-kun, Rias greeted, using his first name with deliberate familiarity. I hope you rested well after yesterday's excitement. Devil subject establishing artificial proximity through linguistic pattern shift, Great Sage noted. Social engineering technique intended to create sense of belonging and indebtedness. I slept surprisingly well, Grimori-senpai, Issei replied, subtly maintaining form. Al addressed to establish his independence. Though I have many questions about everything that's happened. Rias smiled graciously. That's perfectly understandable. Learning about the supernatural world can be overwhelming for humans. Please, ask whatever you wish, and I'll answer as completely as I can. Issei considered his approach carefully. Let's start with the fallen angels. Why are they targeting humans with these sacred gears? And why in your territory specifically? A flicker of approval crossed Rias's face at his analytical question. Direct and insightful. The fallen angels operate under different factions with varying agendas. Some seek sacred gear users to recruit, others to eliminate potential threats. Their activity in my territory is likely both opportunity-based and deliberately provocative. She leaned forward slightly. What concerns me more directly is your unusual ability. I've never seen anything quite like what you demonstrated yesterday, absorbing a light spear and potentially replicating it. That's not characteristic of any sacred gear I'm familiar with. The Devil Princess probes for information, Diedreg observed within Issei's mind. She senses something of my power but cannot reconcile it with your demonstrated abilities. Recommended response: limited disclosure with strategic ambiguity, Great Sage suggested. Reveal connection to Dragon Energy while maintaining Predator ability as separate system. Issei nodded slightly, having reached the same conclusion. I've recently become aware that I possess something called the boosted gear, he stated. Watching Rias's eyes widen in recognition. Though it seems to manifest differently in me than what you might expect. The boosted gear, Rias repeated, genuine surprise disrupting her composed demeanor. One of the 13 Longinus. That's. She exchanged meaningful glances with Akino. That explains the fallen angel's interest, certainly, but not how you absorbed a light spear. The boosted gear enhances the user's power but doesn't typically allow energy absorption. Subject exhibiting heightened interest and confusion, Great Sage noted. Current psychological assessment. Reconsidering recruitment strategy based on new information. My abilities seem to have developed along unconventional lines, Issei explained with calculated vagueness. I'm still learning their full potential myself. Rias studied him with renewed intensity. The boosted gear contains the spirit of the Welsh dragon, Diedreg. Have you communicated with him? We've spoken, Issei confirmed simply. Akino stepped forward, her perpetual smile taking on a more genuine quality. Era, our mysterious Kohai becomes more interesting by the minute. A Longinus wielder developing unique knives. Tations would be valuable to any faction. Devil subjects reassessing host value based on sacred gear classification, Great Sage observed. Probability of increased recruitment efforts, 94.7%. Before Rias could respond, the door opened to admit a silver-haired girl Issei recognized as the student council president, Sona Shitori. Her expression remained impassive as she assessed the room's occupants. Though her gaze lingered slightly longer on Issei. Additional devil entity detected, Great Sage reported immediately. Power signature comparable to primary subject. Classification. Leadership Class Devil with Water Affinity. Assessment. Territorial Co-Administrator. I apologize for interrupting, Rias, Sona said, her voice precise and measured. But when Tsubaki informed me you had the boosted gear wielder in your club room, I felt compelled to verify personally. She adjusted her glasses with a practiced gesture. Especially given the unusual energy fluctuations we detected yesterday evening. Her timing is suspicious, Diedrag rumbled within Issei's mind. She arrived precisely as the conversation turned to my power. They are coordinating more closely than they appear. Rias sighed with theatrical resignation. Your information network remains impressive, Sona. Yes, this is Issei Hyodo, and yes, he possesses the boosted gear, though it manifests in ways I've never encountered before. Sona turned her analytical gaze fully on Issei. Unusual manifestation. How so? Devil subject employing direct questioning technique, Great Sage noted. Assessment. Testing in. Formation consistency between separate conversations. I'm still learning the specifics myself, Issei replied with the same calculated ambiguity he'd offered Rias. Yesterday was the first time I'd encountered other supernatural beings knowingly. Sona's expression remained neutral, though Issei detected slight tension in her posture. Yet you handled a fallen angel attack without assistance. ND absorbed a light spear, an ability not typically associated with the boosted gear. Most interesting. Caution advised, Great Sage warned. Subject demonstrating advanced analytical capabilities. Probability of detecting deliberate information control, moderate to high. The morning bell rang, providing a convenient interruption. Sona nodded slightly. We all have classes to attend. Perhaps we could continue this conversation another time, Hyodo-kun. The student council room is always open to you. As the meeting dispersed, Issei maintained his outwardly calm demeanor while inwardly assessing with both Diedrag and Great Sage. Two devil factions at the school showed particular interest in him now, and both seemed to be operating with agendas they weren't fully disclosing. Your ins. TINCTS to maintain independence were sound, Diedrag commented as Issei walked toward his classroom. Devils seek to collect powerful pieces for their political games. As a Longinus wielder, you would be a particularly valuable acquisition. Quote, additional research on devil society structures recommended, Great Sage added. Current information insufficient for optimal strategic positioning. Issei nodded slightly in acknowledgement. We need more information about all the factions. The school library might have mythology references we could use as starting points, comparing against what we now know as real. A practical approach, Diedrag approved. Though be wary, written human accounts of supernatural beings are often distorted by limited understanding and deliberate misinformation. Classes proceeded with superficial normalcy, though Issei now noticed subtle differences in how certain students observed him. Kiba maintained casual surveillance from a distance. Kaniko's attention felt more focused when their paths crossed between periods. Most tellingly, previously disinterested students occasionally glanced his way with expressions ranging from curiosity to wariness. Social pattern analysis indicates information dissemination among supernatural students, Great Sage noted. Hypothesis. News of boosted gear wielder spreading through established communication networks. During lunch, Issei retreated to the library rather than joining his usual friends, using the opportunity to gather preliminary research materials. The mythology section proved surprisingly extensive, with volumes covering global supernatural traditions rather than just Japanese folklore. Subject approaching, Great Sage suddenly warned. Classification. Devil, female, previously unencountered. Energy. Y signature indicates night class designation. Issei looked up to find a girl with chestnut hair watching him from the end of the bookshelf. She wore the Kuo Academy uniform with distinctive red rammed glasses and carried herself with disciplined poise. Hyodo-kun, she greeted formally. I'm Tsubaki Shinra, vice president of the student council. Kaichu asked me to provide you with these. She offered a small stack of books with titles relating to various mythological traditions. She thought they might be more accurate than the general collection. Probability assessment. Books Kant. Ain supernatural information curated for human passing devils, Great Sage analyzed. Likely accurate but strategically edited. Thank her for me, Issei replied, accepting the volumes with appropriate gratitude. That's thoughtful of Shitori-senpai. Tsubaki maintained her formal demeanor. Kaichu also extends an invitation to join us for lunch tomorrow. She believes discussing your situation with both major devil houses present at the school would be beneficial. The devils coordinate their approach, Diedrag observed. They compete but unite when mutual interests align. Strategic. Issei nodded. I'd be happy to join you tomorrow. Please thank Shitori-senpai for her consideration. After Tsubaki departed, Issei examined the books she had provided. They appeared to be normal academic texts, though Great Sage detected subtle magical properties embedded in the binding of 2 volumes. Enchanted literature detected, Great Sage reported. Properties suggest information adaptation based on reader knowledge level. Assessment. Sophisticated educational tools rather than surveillance devices. These devils are more helpful than I expected, Issei murmured quietly. Do not mistake strategic cooperation for altruism. Diedrag cautioned. They provide selective information to draw you closer to their sphere of influence. A common recruitment technique across many species. SSEI spent the remainder of lunch cataloging potentially useful references for later research, focusing particularly on dragon mythology given his connection to Diedrag. As the bell signaled the end of the lunch period, he noticed a paper that had been slipped between the pages of one book, a note in elegant handwriting. Certain topics are better discussed away from monitoring spells. Roof access, west stairwell, after final bell, SS. Quote, intriguing, Diedrag rumbled. The C-Tree Devil seeks private communication outside her faction's knowledge. Probability assessment. 72.4% genuine separate agenda. 27.6% coordinated testing strategy, Great Sage calculated. Recommendation. Cautious engagement with defensive preparation. The afternoon classes passed with agonizing slowness as Issei templated the possible reasons for this clandestine meeting. When the final bell rang, he made his way casually toward the west stairwell, maintaining awareness of potential surveillance. Multiple magical observation constructs detected throughout main corridors, Great Sage warned. Design consistent with devil surveillance methodology. West stairwell specifically lacks monitoring coverage, deliberate blind spot. Issei climbed the stairs and emerged onto a section of roof normally off limits to students. Sona Shitori stood near the edge, gazing out over the school grounds with hands clasped behind her back. She turned as the door closed behind him, her expression revealing nothing of her thoughts. Thank you for coming, Hyodo-kun, she said, her voice modulated to prevent carrying beyond their immediate vicinity. I apologize for the theatrical approach, but certain conversations require privacy even from allies. I appreciate discretion, Shitori-senpai, Issei replied, maintaining a respectful distance. What did you want to discuss that requires such privacy? Sona studied him carefully before responding. You possess a Longinus class sacred gear with apparently unprecedented manifestation properties. That alone would make you significant. However, there's something else about you, something neither Rias nor I can quite identify despite considerable experience with supernatural entities. Subject demonstrating superior analytical capabilities compared to Grimoire Devil, Great Sage noted. Assessment. Genuinely seeking information rather than implementing recruitment strategy. What makes you think I'm anything more than a sacred gear wielder? Issei asked carefully. Sona adjusted her glasses. Sacred gears follow certain fundamental rules despite their variety. They manifest with consistent properties for each type, draw upon specific energy sources, and interact with their wielders in documented ways. She met his gaze directly. Your abilities break these patterns. You absorbed light energy, impossible for both humans and devils. Your energy signature contains draconic elements but flows throughout your body rather than concentrating in a manifestation point. She took a step closer, voice dropping further. Most tellingly, when Kaneko described your scent as wrong, I recognized the implications immediately. You exist outside established supernatural classifications, Hyodo-kun, and that makes you potentially valuable beyond measure, or dangerous beyond tolerance. Devil subject has identified fundamental anomalies in host composition, Great Sage warned. Concealment compromised. Recommendation. Strategic partial disclosure to establish non-hostile positioning. You're very perceptive, Shitori-senpai, Issei acknowledged. Why, Or right that I'm not quite what everyone assumes. My connection to Diedrag is real, but my physiology developed, uniquely after a childhood incident. I'm still human at my core, just with adaptations most humans don't possess. Sona's expression remained analytical rather than alarmed. These adaptations allow you to absorb and potentially replicate supernatural energies. Fascinating. She aced a small circle before facing him again. Such abilities would be coveted by all factions. Which brings me to my actual purpose in speaking with you privately. She lowered her voice further. As sees you as a potential peerage member, a powerful piece in raiding games and faction politics. That's her prerogative as a devil heiress. My perspective is more pragmatic. I believe your anomalous Atur might be more valuable as an independent factor than as a subordinate piece. Unexpected strategic assessment, Great Sage noted. Subject displaying analytical depth beyond initial parameters. Probability of genuine alternative agenda, 89.7%. You're suggesting I remain unaffiliated. Issei clarified. I'm suggesting you consider all options carefully before committing to any faction, Sona replied. Devils, fallen angels, yokai, each will present compelling reasons to join them. Your unique status grants you unusual leverage in such negotiations. The Sea-Tree Devil demonstrates cunning, Diedrag observed. She positions herself as an advisor rather than a recruiter, building trust while maintaining influence. Sona turned back toward the school grounds. There are entities beyond the three factions that might take interest in your unusual nature. Some beneficial, others extremely dangerous. If you intend to navigate supernatural politics independently, you'll need significantly more information than what's available in those books. She produced a small business card with a simple magic circle printed on its reverse. This will connect you to my familiar. Unlike the communication circle Rias provided, this one contains no tracking or monitoring functions. Use it if you encounter situations where faction politics make official assistance complicated. Object offering genuine strategic alliance outside formal structures, Great Sage assessed. Uncommon behavior pattern for devil hierarchy. Recommendation. Cautious acceptance. Issei accepted the card with appropriate gravity. Thank you for your candor, Shitori Senpai. May I ask what benefit you see in helping me maintain independence rather than recruiting me yourself? A ghost of a smile touched Sona's lips. Analytical as well as powerful. Good. She adjusted her glasses again. Let's call it a long-term investment in a potentially valuable neutral party. Sometimes having a powerful ity obligated through genuine assistance proves more beneficial than direct subordination. The rooftop door opened before Issei could respond, admitting Tsubaki with a carefully neutral expression. Kaichu. The meeting with club presidents begins in 5 minutes, she announced, her tone giving nothing away regarding the private conversation she had interrupted. Thank you, Tsubaki, Sona replied smoothly. We were just concluding. She nodded politely to Issei. Consider what we discussed, Hyodo-kun. Information is power in the supernatural world, perhaps the only power that truly matters. As Issei descended the stairwell after their departure, he processed the conversation with both Great Sage and Diedrag, analyzing implications and potential strategies. The Sea-Tree Devil displays uncommon foresight, Diedrag commented. Unlike most of her kind, she values strategic positioning over immediate acquisition. A dangerous mind. Assessment concurs, Great Sage added. Subject demo. Straight's complex political awareness and alternative strategic framework. Probability of hidden agenda remains, but approach offers practical advantages regardless of motivation. Issei nodded slightly. We accept her information while maintaining independence. The more sources we develop, the more complete our understanding becomes. As he exited the school building, Great Sage suddenly issued a warning. Unknown energy signature detected approaching school perimeter. Classification. Draconic, extremely powerful. Threat assessment. Severe. Diedrag's reaction was immediate and visceral. Tiamat. Her energy is unmistakable. She must have sensed my awakening. This is problematic. Tiamat. Issei questioned, immediately connecting the name to dragon mythology. The Chaos Karma Dragon. One of the 5 dragon kings. Diedrag confirmed, his mental voice uncharacteristically tense. And she holds a particular grudge against me for historical reasons. Her hosts have hunted my hosts for millennia. She must have detected our connection when we established communication. Draconic entity approaching at high velocity, Great Sage warned. Current trajectory indicates interception in approximately 47 seconds. Recommendation: immediate evasive action. Issei broke into a run, heading toward the wooded area where he had previously encountered the kitsune. The trees would do some cover and limit collateral damage if confrontation proved unavoidable. If she's targeting you through me, can we hide your presence somehow? Issei asked as he sprinted. Impossible at this range, Didraig replied. She's already locked onto my energy signature. Your unusual physiology may confuse her initially, but she will recognize me within you. Prepare for emergency absorption protocols. Issei instructed Great Sage as he reached the tree line. If she attacks with energy-based abilities, we attempt capture and analysis rather than evasion. Draconic energy substantially different from previously encountered types, Great Sage cautioned. Absorption efficiency uncertain. Simulation indicates approximately 35% baseline compatibility with current predator parameters. Air pressure changed suddenly, a subtle shift that raised the hairs on Issei's arms moments before an enormous shadow passed overhead. He looked up to see a massive shape blotting out the sun, at Lee. Saint 15 meters from wingtip to wingtip. The creature circled once before descending into a clearing ahead, the downdraft from its wings bending trees as though in a hurricane. She's manifesting her true form, Didraig observed grimly. A rare display of raw power. Most dragon entities maintain humanoid appearances in human realms. Issei advanced cautiously toward the clearing, preparing multiple defensive options. As he emerged from the trees, he beheld Tiamat in her full draconic glory, scales the deep blue of ocean abysses, eyes that glowed with internal sapphire light, and a body that radiated such overwhelming power that the air itself seemed to warp around her. I smell you, Didraig, her voice rumbled, each word sending vibrations through the ground beneath Issei's feet. After all these centuries, you dare awaken in my territory. Without warning, she exhaled a stream of blue-white energy that carved a trench in the earth as it sped toward Issei. Rather than dodging, he activated Predator throughout his body, allowing the blast to strike him directly while initiating absorption protocols. The impact drove him backward several meters despite his preparation. Unlike Rainer's light spear, Tiamat's breath attack contained raw draconic energy that resonated with Didraig's power within him, creating feedback loops that Great Sage struggled to process. Draconic energy absorption at 41.2% efficiency. Great Sage reported as Issei's body incorporated what it could of the attack. Higher than projected baseline, dragon energy pathways facilitating partial compatibility. Full assimilation impossible with current parameters. The remaining energy dispersed around Issei in a spectacular display of deflection, scorching the ground in a circular pattern but leaving him largely unharmed at the center. He straightened slowly, meeting Tiamat's incredulous gaze as his body finished processing the absorbed portion of her attack. That's not possible, she growled, Moss. Sieve head lowering to examine him more closely. No human vessel could survive my breath, even with Didraig's power bolstering them. What manner of creature are you? Analysis complete, Great Sage announced internally. Chaos Dragon Energy Properties Catalog. Partial replication possible. Note: energy contains spatial distortion components not previously encountered. Issei took a deliberate breath, centering himself before responding. I am Issei Hyodo. Yes, I contain Didraig, but as you've noticed, I'm not a conventional host. Tiamat's enormous eyes narrowed to slits. You smell of dragon and something else. Something fluid and adaptable. She inhaled deeply, serpentine tongue flickering to taste the air. How did you absorb my attack? Answer truthfully, strange one. Subject. Court analyzing host composition through enhanced sensory capabilities, Great Sage noted. Concealment ineffective against draconic olfactory processing. Recommendation: strategic disclosure to establish non-threatening status. I possess abilities beyond the standard sacred gear framework, Issei explained, maintaining steady eye contact with the enormous dragon. My body can adapt to and partially absorb various energy types, including your draconic power just now. Tiamat circled him slowly, her massive tail sweeping aside trees as though they were mere twigs. Fascinating. Didraig's hosts are typically straightforward warrior types, all power and aggression with little subtlety. You are different. She lowered her head until one enormous eye was level with Issei's face. Speak to me, Red One. Explain why I shouldn't destroy this unusual vessel of yours on principle. Issei felt Ddraig stir within his consciousness, the ancient dragon's presence expanding until it partially merged with Issei's own awareness, a sensation both foreign and strangely natural. Greetings, Tiamat, Ddraig spoke through Issei's mouth, though the voice remained Issei's own. Our last encounter was unpleasant for both of us. Perhaps this unusual circumstance offers opportunity for a different interaction. 3 Consciousness integration functioning at optimal parameters, Great Sage noted. Shared communication channels established without compromising individual awareness structures. Tiamat's growl shook the clearing. Unpleasant. You destroyed my favorite collection of human artifacts during our battle in their Mediterranean region. Treasures I had accumulated over centuries, reduced to ash because of your petty rivalry with Albion. A regrettable incident, Ddraig conceded through Issei. Though I recall you weren't entirely blameless in that particular encounter. Before Tiamat could respond with what looked to be building rage, Issei reasserted primary control over his vocal functions. Perhaps we could discuss historical grievances under less destructive circumstances. This forest borders human educational facilities. Tiamat blinked, seemingly surprised by the interruption and change in speech patterns. After a moment of consideration, her enormous form began to shimmer and contract, blue scales flowing like water until a human figure stood before him. In her humanoid form, Tiamat appeared as a woman of striking beauty, tall and regal with deep blue hair that fell in waves to her waist. Her eyes retained their sapphire glow, and her features carried an aristocratic sharpness that no human face could quite achieve. She wore an elegant dress that seemed woven from water itself, shifting and flowing with her movements. Better? She asked, her voice now melodic rather than earth-shaking. Though no less commanding. Though this form limits my power considerably. Subject demonstrating cooperative adjustment, Great Sage observed. Probability SS meant. Genuinely intrigued by host's unusual nature. Aggression reduced 47% from initial encounter. Thank you, Issei replied with genuine appreciation. I imagine maintaining your true form requires considerable energy in this realm. Tiamat raised an elegant eyebrow. You understand draconic energy conservation principles. Most hosts barely comprehend their own sacred gears, let alone the metaphysical mechanics involved. I'm still learning, Issei admitted. But my unique composition allows for more direct information exchange with both Ddraig and my analytical abilities. Analytical abilities, Tiamat repeated thoughtfully. Yes, I sense something beyond both human and dragon within you, something that processes and categorizes with remarkable efficiency. She circled him again, now in human form, studying him with scientific curiosity rather than hostile intent. You absorbed a portion of my breath attack, an impossible feat for ordinary beings. She stopped directly before him, close enough that Issei could see flecks of silver in her sapphire eyes. What are you, really? Strategic disclosure recommended, Great Sage advised. Subject's curiosity has overcome initial hostility. Opportunity for potential alliance or information exchange. I'm human by birth, Issei began carefully. But a childhood incident activated unusual abilities, particularly the kappa city to absorb and analyze various substances and energies. When these abilities interacted with the dormant boosted gear, they created something new, a hybrid system where Ddraig's power flows through. UGH out my adaptable physiology rather than manifesting conventionally. Tiamat's eyes widened slightly, the first genuine surprise she had displayed. A slime-dragon hybrid, unprecedented. She extended a hand, pausing just short of touching him. May I? Issei nodded permission, and she placed her palm against his chest. He felt her power probing gently through his body, not invasive but thoroughly analytical. Extraordinary, she murmured after several seconds. Your internal structure can reconfigure at will, yet maintains draconic energy pathways throughout. The sacred gear hasn't merely been contained within you, it's been partially absorbed and reconstructed according to principles of never encountered. She withdrew her hand, expression shifting from scientific curiosity to something more complex. This changes matters considerably. My quarrel with Diedrade remains, but your existence presents questions more interesting than revenge. Subject's priorities shifting from historical grievance to scientific inquiry. Great Sage assessed. Probability of continued non-hostility, 83.6% and increasing. What questions interest you most? Issei asked, recognizing the opportunity. Why to establish a more constructive relationship with this extremely powerful entity? Tiamat's lips curved in a smile that contained equal parts amusement and calculation. How your hybrid state might evolve, for one. Dragons and slimes represent opposing principles in many ways. Dragons epitomize fixed power growing through accumulation, while slimes represent adaptive potential through transformation. Their successful integration shouldn't be possible. She gestured to the scorched ground around them. Yet here you stand, having absorbed dragon breath that would incinerate ordinary beings. The implications are significant. We have many questions ourselves, Issei admitted. I'm still discovering the extent of these hybrid abilities, and information about either dragons or slimes is surprisingly limited in available resources. Tiamat tilted her head thoughtfully. Information. Yes, that would be your primary need at this developmental stage. She seemed to reach a decision. Perhaps we can establish an arrangement beneficial to both our interests. I possess knowledge accumulated over millennia, including considerable data on draconic physiologies and energy manipulation. Subject proposing information exchange. Great Sage noted, significant opportunity for accelerated understanding of draconic principles. Recommendation. Conditional acceptance with appropriate safeguards. What would you want in exchange? Issei asked cautiously. Tiamat's smile widened slightly. Access to observe your development, primarily. The opportunity to study a successful dragon slime. Hybrid is unique in my considerable experience. I would also require regular updates on your evolving capabilities and periodic samples for my own analysis. She seeks to study you as much as you seek to learn from her. Diedrade commented internally. A more productive interaction than our historical encounters, certainly. Issei considered the proposal carefully. I'm open to information exchange and limited observation. Samples would depend on their nature and intended use. And I would need assurance that your historical issues with Diedrade won't result in future aggression. Tiamat laughed. A sound like crystal bells that nevertheless contained ancient power. Practical and diplomatic, so unlike Diedrade's typical hosts. She extended her hand formally. I propose a temporary truce regarding historical grievances. Renewable based on the value of our information exchange. Acceptable. Probability of genuine compliance. 76.2%, Great Sage calculated. Subject demonstrates sincere scientific interest. Recommendation. Accept with monitoring provisions. Issei took her offered hand, noting the unusual warmth of her skin, significantly higher than human baseline temperature. Agreed, though I would appreciate some explanation of the history between you and Diedrade at some point. Ancient history best discussed over appropriate refreshment, Tiamat replied cryptically. She Relaya, said his hand and turned toward the forest. I maintain a residence nearby. Dragon kings typically establish territories near their interests. Would tomorrow evening be convenient for our first proper exchange? I shall prepare materials regarding basic draconic energy principles. That would be fine, Issei agreed, slightly surprised by the rapidly established arrangement. How will I find you? Tiamat produced a small blue scale from seemingly nowhere. This will guide you when the time comes. Simply hold it and think of our meeting. She handed him the scale, which felt cool despite having come from her person. Until tomorrow. Unusual one. With that, she walked into the forest, her form shimmering briefly before disappearing among the trees. Assessment. Significant tactical advantage secured. Great Sage stated once she had departed. Dragon King class entity transitioned from hostile to cooperative status within single encounter. Knowledge acquisition prospects substantial. Don't celebrate prematurely. Diedrade cautioned. Tiamat is as cunning as she is powerful. While her scientific curiosity appears genuine, she undoubtedly has additional motives. Dragons, especially ancient ones like her, think in timeframes that make decades seem insignificant. Issei nodded slightly, examining the scale she had given him. Even this small fragment radiated considerable power, Great Sage was already analyzing its properties for potential applications. Scale contains sympathetic magic linking to originator, Great Sage reported. Properties suggest tracking and communication functions. No harmful components detected, though passive information gathering capability likely. A way for her to monitor my movements, Issei surmised. Expected, if somewhat intrusive. He carefully stored the scale in his pocket as he made his way back toward the school grounds, processing the day's remarkable developments. In less than 24 hours, he had established communication with Didrag, received covert support from Sona Shitori, and negotiated a truce with one of the legendary Dragon Kings. The supernatural world was proving both more complex and more accessible than he had anticipated. Upcoming schedule optimization required, Great Sage noted. Multiple faction interactions established with competing priorities. Recommendation: establish information processing protocols to maximize knowledge acquisition while maintaining strategic independence. Issei agreed silently as he reached the school gates. The key to navigating these factional politics would be maintaining balance, accepting information and limited assistance without becoming beholden to any single entity. Sona had been right about the value of independence in such circumstances. As he turned toward home, a prickling sensation at the back of his neck alerted him to yet another observation, this one far more subtle than Tiamat's overwhelming presence. Unidentified entity tracking host from concealed position. Great Sage warned. Yokai-type energy signature, significantly suppressed. Probability assessment. Same entity detected previously after occult research club meeting. Issei maintained his casual pace while extending his senses as Great Sage had taught him, seeking the elusive observer. He caught a fleeting impression. Golden eyes watching from shadows, an energy signature both feline and deeply magical. Curious, Didrag commented. This one masks their presence with considerable skill. Few yokai possess such advanced concealment abilities. Rather than acknowledging the watcher directly, Issei continued homeward, allowing Great Sage to gather what data it could from the brief contact. Another player in this expanding game had revealed themselves, however partially. Each such encounter added pieces to the complex puzzle of supernatural politics surrounding him. The yokai presence vanished as he approached more populated areas, withdrawing rather than risking detection by others. Issei filed the interaction away for future consideration, another potential faction showing interest in his unusual nature. That evening, Issei sat cross-legged on his bedroom floor, surrounded by the reference materials Sona had provided. Great Sage projected relevant passages into his mind as he sorted through contradictory accounts of dragon physiology and hierarchy. Historical records indicate significant bias in human documentation, Great Sage noted. Religious influences particularly distort objective analysis of dragon capabilities and social structures. Humans fear what they don't understand, Didrag added. And dragons have been deliberately enigmatic throughout history. Even these relatively accurate texts contain fundamental misconceptions. Issei sighed, setting aside a particularly fanciful account of dragon mating habits. We need first-hand information rather than human interpretations. Tomorrow's meeting with Tiamat could provide valuable corrections. A gentle tap at his window interrupted his research. Issei turned to find a black cat perched on the sill, regarding him with unnaturally golden eyes. The creature tapped the glass again with deliberate precision. Yokai energy signature detected, Great Sage reported immediately. Classification: Nekomata, high level. Matches previous observation patterns. Recommendation: caught. IOUS engagement with defensive preparations. Issei approached the window slowly, maintaining awareness of his surroundings as he unlatched it. The cat entered with fluid grace, landing silently on his desk before turning to face him. You're an interesting one, the cat said in a distinctly feminine voice, its tail swaying hypnotically. Not quite human, not quite anything else I've encountered. How fascinating. Without warning, the cat's form expanded in a swirl of dark energy, resolving into a young woman with long black hair and the same golden eyes. She wore a black kimono that left little to the imagination, open enough to reveal substantial cleavage and tied with a yellow obi. Most notably, she retained both cat ears and two black tails that continued their hypnotic swaying behind her. Much better, she purred, stretching languorously. Maintaining that form for extended periods is so restrictive. She smiled at Issei's carefully neutral expression. No need for alarm, Nya tilde. If I meant you harm, I wouldn't have knocked. Nekomata entity identified, Great Sage updated. Visual and energy pattern analysis suggests SS class yokai. Threat assessment. Significant but currently non-hostile. You've been watching me, Issei stated, maintaining a comfortable distance. Why? The Nekomata's smile widened. Direct and observant. I like that. She perched on the edge of his desk, crossing her legs elegantly. My name is Kuroka, and yes, I've been watching you. It's not often I encounter someone who absorbs a Dragon King's breath attack and negotiates terms rather than fleeing or dying. That tends to capture attention, Nya tilde. Subject has observed Tiamat encounter, Great Sage noted. Surveillance capabilities exceed previous assessment. Recommendation. Reassess. Concealment protocols for future sensitive interactions. What do you want, Kuroka-san? Issei asked directly. She tilted her head, ears twitching slightly. Information, primarily. You're Somethi. New in a very old game. Not affiliated with devils despite attending their school, not properly human despite your appearance, and now apparently on speaking terms with a Dragon King. That makes you relevant to certain interests. Your interests are someone else's. Issei pressed. Kuroka laughed softly. Clever boy. Both, potentially. She leaned forward slightly. I'm currently unaffiliated with major factions. Having left my previous employment under somewhat dramatic circumstances. Independent operators like myself need to stay informed about emerging powers. Subject displaying genuine curiosity beneath casual demeanor, Great Sage assessed. Probability of secondary agenda, high. Recommendation. Limited information exchange to assess motivations. And what do you offer in exchange for satisfying this curiosity? Issei asked. Kuroka's eyes gleamed with approval. You understand how these things work. Good. She stretched again, a deliberately sensual movement that emphasized her figure. I possess considerable knowledge about yokai factions and senjutsu, the manipulation of natural energy. Skills that might complement your unusual abilities quite effectively. Enjutsu assessment. Potentially valuable enhancement to current capabilities, Great Sage noted. Natural energy manipulation would provide significant advantages in predator efficiency optimization. I'm listening, Issei replied, intentionally unmoved by her physical display. Kuroka's expression shifted slightly, becoming more businesslike despite her playful demeanor. Your body processes energy differently from anything I've encountered. Based on what I observed today, you can absorb and potentially redirect supernatural attacks, an invaluable defensive capability. However, your efficiency seemed limited with draconic energy. Quote, she extended one hand, palm up, where a small sphere of bluish energy formed. Senjutsu involves manipulating the natural energy that flows through all living things. Mastering these principles could potentially enhance your absorption capabilities and overall energy control. Legitimate technical assessment, Great Sage confirmed. Subject demonstrating advanced understanding of energy manipulation principles. Offer appears genuinely valuable despite likely secondary motivations. And what would you want in exchange for such training? Issei asked carefully. Kuroka dismissed the energy sphere with a flick of her wrist. Protection, primarily. My unaffiliated status makes me vulnerable to certain factions who object to my independence. A mutually beneficial arrangement where I provide training while enjoying the deterrent of association with you would serve us both. She seeks shelter without subordination, Didraig observed. A clever approach that preserves her autonomy while addressing her security concerns. Issei considered the proposal thoughtfully. You're a wanted criminal in certain circles. Rather than appearing offended, Kuroka seemed impressed by his deduction. You've been gathering information efficiently, Nya tilde. Yes, the devil faction considers me a stray, to be eliminated on sight. The circumstances were complicated. For a brief moment, genuine emotion flickered across her features before her playful mask returned. Psychological assessment. Subject experienced significant trauma related to devil faction, Great Sage noted. Genuine emotional response detected beneath artificial casualness. I'd need to know those circumstances before considering any arrangement, Issei stated firmly. Associate. Ion with a wanted criminal carries its own risks, particularly given my current balancing act between factions. Kuroka studied him silently for a moment, her golden eyes revealing nothing of her thoughts. Finally, she nodded once. Fair enough. The condensed version. I killed my devil master to protect my younger sister from his experiments. Devils consider killing one's master the ultimate crime, regardless of circumstances. Her voice remained light, but Issei detected the undercurrent of deep rage and pain beneath the casual tone. I escaped, but couldn't take my sister with me at the time. She now serves in Rimuri's household, the small white-haired girl with the emotionless expression. Kaneko Tuju is your sister, Issei clarified, recalling the petite first year's watchful presence. Her real name is Sharon, Kuroka corrected softly. They gave her a new identity after I fled. Her tail stopped their hypnotic swaying, reflecting her momentary seriousness. I've been monitoring her from a distance, ensuring her safety while avoiding detection by devil surveillance. Subject statement consistent with observed behavior patterns of younger devil, Great Sage confirmed. Facial structure analysis indicates 97.2% probability of genetic relationship. Emotional response patterns suggest genuine protective motivation. Issei nodded slowly. Thank you for your honesty. I'll consider your proposal, but I need time to assess how it fits with my existing arrangements and goals. Kuroka's playful demeanor returned instantly. Of course, Nya. Consider it carefully. She stood gracefully, stretching once more. I'll return in 3 days for your answer. Until then, she reached out suddenly, her movement too quick to track, and lightly tapped Issei's forehead with one finger. A little gift to demonstrate good faith, she explained as Issei felt a warm sensation spread from the contact point. Basic senjutsu awareness. It should help you begin sensing the natural energy flows around you, giving you a taste of what proper training could offer. Energy transfer detected, Great Sage confirmed. Properties consistent with described senjutsu principles. No harmful components identified. New sensory processing pathways establishing in central nervous system. Indeed, Issei suddenly became aware of subtle energies flowing through his room, currents and eddies of power he had never perceived before. The sensation was both disorienting and fascinating. Impressive, isn't it? Kuroka purred, clearly noting his reaction. That's merely the surface level. With proper training, you could manipulate these energies directly, enhancing your existing abilities considerably. She moved back toward the window, her form already beginning to shimmer with transformation energy. 3 days, interesting boy. Consider what I've offered carefully. With that, she shifted back to cat form and leapt gracefully into the night, leaving Issei with yet another potential alliance to evaluate and an entirely new sensory dimension to explore. Assessment. Significant opportunity with proportionate risk, Great Sage summarized once she had departed. Enjutsu capabilities would complement existing abilities effectively. Subject's criminal status creates complications with devil factions but potentially provides valuable intelligence on their internal operations. The Nekomata's offer is substantive, Drake agreed. Senjutsu masters can achieve effects impossible through conventional magic. However, her past suggests complexity we don't yet fully understand. Issei nodded, already feeling his perception expanding as the senjutsu awareness Kuroka had gifted him continued integrating with his nervous system. Even this basic capability led the world in entirely new dimensions, layers of energy flowing through living organisms, currents of power in the earth beneath his home, even faint resonances from distant magical workings. We gather more information before deciding, he determined, returning to his research materials with renewed purpose. Each potential ally brings both opportunity and complication. The key is balancing our various interests while maintaining our independence. He picked up a particularly promising text on dragon energy manipulation, now able to perceive the faint magical properties embedded in its binding thanks to his enhanced senses. The supernatural world continued expanding before him, each revelation opening doors to entirely new realms of possibility. Somewhere in the night, a dragon watched from her hidden sanctuary. Elsewhere, a Nekomata contemplated the potential value of her offered alliance. Throughout Kuo town, devils monitored boundaries and calculated strategies. And at the center of their intersecting interests, Issei Hyodo, human, slime, and dragon in unprecedented combination, prepared for whatever tomorrow might bring. The game had only just begun. Chapter 2 Chapter 3, Faction Politics. The mansion materialized between heartbeats, a towering Victorian structure of midnight blue stone where nothing had stood moments before. Issei paused at the wrought iron gate, Tiamat's scale warm against his palm as the concealment magic parted exclusively for him. Sculpted dragons decorated the entryway, their sapphire eyes following his movement with unsettling awareness. Probability assessment. Dimensional pocket rather than conventional structure, Great Sage noted. Architecture exists adjacent to standard reality. Tiamat has always appreciated dramatic presentations. Didraig rumbled within Issei's mind. Dragon kings rarely subscribe to subtlety when displaying their domains. The massive double doors swung inward before Issei could knock, revealing a grand foyer lined with artifacts from various historical periods, Greek amphorae beside medieval tapestries, Egyptian reliefs adjacent to Renaissance sculptures. The collection spoke of centuries of careful acquisition, all arranged with meticulous precision. My unusual guest arrives precisely on time, Tiamat's melodic voice announced as she descended a sweeping staircase. A refreshing quality in these modern days. She wore an elegant blue gown that seemed to flow like water with each movement, her hair cascading in waves down her back. Despite the formal attire, her bare feet remained. Issei of her draconic nature, comfort prioritized over human convention. Thank you for having me, Issei replied with a slight bow. Your collection is remarkable. Tiamat's lips curved in pleased acknowledgement. Replacements for what was destroyed centuries ago, though some pieces surpass the originals. Her eyes flashed momentarily toward Didraig's presence within him. Dragons value history, particularly our own. She gestured toward a side corridor. The library seems most appropriate for our exchange. I've prepared materials on basic draconic energy principles as promised. The library defied conventional dimensions, stretching impossibly far beyond what the exterior structure should contain. Bookshelves towered 3 stories high, accessible via rolling ladders and floating platforms. Texts in languages both recognizable and utterly foreign filled every available space, some bound in materials Issei couldn't identify. Spatial manipulation detected, Great Sage observed. Quote, interior dimensions exceed exterior parameters by approximately 427%. Advanced magic sustaining expanded pocket reality. At the center of the vast room stood a circular table of polished obsidian, upon which several ancient-looking tomes had been carefully arranged. 2 comfortable chairs awaited them, positioned so neither participant would dominate the conversation. Before we begin, Tiamat said as they seated themselves, I must confess additional curiosity about your nature. You mentioned a childhood incident activated your unusual abilities. What exactly occurred? Issei considered how much to reveal. I nearly drowned in a pond when I was 7. As oxygen deprivation reached critical levels, something awakened inside me, an ability to absorb and process the water rather than being harmed by it. And the voice you call Great Sage emerged simultaneously. She pressed, leaning forward slightly. Subject displaying particular interest in analytical component of host's abilities, Great Sage noted. Recommendation. Limited disclosure without revealing full integration capabilities. Issei nodded. Yes, though its capabilities were initially limited. We've evolved together over the years, developing more complex analysis and absorption functions. Tiamat's eyes gleamed with scientific fascination. Most intriguing. The timing suggests your near-death experience might Avenue triggered both Didraig's early stirring and this analytical entity's manifestation, creating an unprecedented hybrid system. She opened one of the ancient tomes, revealing diagrams of energy flow. Unlike anything in human medical or magical texts. Dragon physiology operates on fundamentally different principles than other supernatural entities. Our power derives from conceptual manifestation rather than mere biological function. Meaning? Issei asked. Dragons embody concepts, she explained, tracing a complex pattern on the page. Didraig represents domination, while his rival Albion embodies supremacy. My own essence aligns with chaos and fluidity. These aren't merely symbolic associations but fundamental components of our existence. She turned the book toward him, revealing illustrations of internal energy structures. Human sacred gear wielders typically contain their dragon's power in isolated systems, like a battery connected to limited circuitry. Your liquid phi, Psiology appears to have dissolved these boundaries, allowing Didrake's conceptual essence to permeate your entire being. That explains the distributed nature of my abilities, Issei mused, studying the diagrams with fascination. Instead of manifesting the boosted gear as a gauntlet, I can channel dragon energy throughout my entire body. Precisely. Tiamat produced a small crystal sphere from her sleeve. Observe. She breathed gently on the crystal, which filled with swirling blue energy patterns. This is my power in its raw state, chaos energy with fluid properties. She passed it to Issei. Hold this and tell me what your analytical companion perceives. Issei accepted the sphere, immediately feeling the vibrant energy resonating against his palm. Great Sage began processing the information at remarkable speed. Analysis indicates conceptual energy rather than elemental composition, Great Sage reported. Properties suggest fundamental reality manipulation rather than conventional magical construction. Base pattern recognition indicates 89.7% compatibility with spatial distortion applications. Your energy contains spatial manipulation properties, Issei relayed, turning the crystal to observe how the energies shifted. It's not just destructive force but reality-altering potential. Tiamat's eyebrows rose slightly. Impressive perception. Most beings, even other dragons, perceive only the destructive aspects of my breath weapon. The spatial distortion components require significantly more advanced analysis. She retrieved the crystal, her expression thoughtful. Your analytical abilities exceed my expectations. This suggests your absorption capabilities might similarly evolve beyond initial parameters. For the next 2 hours, Tiamat guided Issei through fundamental principles of draconic energy manipulation, explaining concepts that human magical theory had never approached. She demonstrated how dragons converted conceptual energy into physical effects, manipulated spatial properties, and established dimensional territories like the mansion they currently occupied. Dragon kings and heavenly dragons exist partially outside conventional reality, she explained while sketching complex formulae in the air with glowing energy. This allows us to create pocket dimensions, manipulate space-time locally, and even survive in the dimensional gap if necessary. Is that why Didrake's energy feels different from other supernatural types I've encountered? Issei asked. It seems to operate on more fundamental levels. Tiamat nodded approvingly. Exactly. Devils, angels, and yokai manipulate existing reality through various magical systems. Dragons alter the underlying framework itself. She gave him a measuring look. Which makes your ability to absorb such energy all the more remarkable. Current absorption efficiency for draconic energy, 43.8%, Great Sage noted internally. Significant improvement from initial 35% baseline through AP. Applied understanding of conceptual principles. As their session concluded, Tiamat closed the ancient tome with careful reverence. You've absorbed more information more quickly than I anticipated. Your analytical abilities clearly enhance your learning capacity substantially. She rose with fluid grace. Now, I believe I promised some explanation regarding my history with your draconic passenger. I've been curious about that, Issei acknowledged, following her from the library into what appeared to be a more informal sitting room. Crystal decanters containing liquids of various colors adorned a sideboard. Tiamat selected one containing an amber fluid that glowed faintly from within. Dragon Fire Whiskey, she explained, pouring 2 glasses. One of the few human creations enhanced by draconic influence. It won't intoxicate you, but it facilitates certain types of memory sharing. Issei accepted the offered glass cautiously. Memory sharing. Dragon subject proposing psychic information transfer through alchemical medium, Great Sage analyzed. Composition suggests neural pathway enhancement rather than mind control. Risk assessment. Moderate but manageable. It allows me to show rather than merely tell. Tiamat explained, taking a small sip from her own glass. More efficient than hours of exposition, particularly for events spanning centuries. After confirming Great Sage detected no harmful components, Issei tasted the whiskey. Warmth spread instantly through his system, carrying flavors of smoke, honey, and something distinctly otherworldly. Almost immediately, his perception shifted as images began flowing into his consciousness. Ancient mountains beneath unfamiliar constellations. 2 massive dragons, one crimson, one white, locked in aerial combat that shattered peaks and boiled oceans. Their battle moved across continents, heedless of the destruction left in their wake. Asterisk. A blue dragoness watched from her coastal territory as the fighting approached. Her carefully collected treasures at risk as destructive energies filled the sky. Asterisk. Warnings issued and ignored. Territorial boundaries violated. A third dragon joining the conflict not by choice, but necessity, defending millennia of accumulated knowledge and artifacts from the two rivals' careless devastation. Asterisk. Three-way battle escalating beyond control. Continents fracturing. Seas boiling away. Finally, intervention from multiple factions. Gods and beings of immense power forcing separation and eventually sealing the two rivals into sacred gears. Asterisk. The aftermath. Territories destroyed, collections annihilated. Relationships severed. A blue dragoness surveying charred remnants of irreplaceable treasures, vowing retribution against both rivals but particularly the red one who had initiated that particular territorial incursion. Asterisk. The visions faded as Issei set down his glass, processing what he had witnessed. You lost your territorial collections because of their battle. Tiam. At's eyes reflected ancient grief momentarily before returning to cool assessment. The simplified version, yes. Didraig and Albion's rivalry destroyed much more than physical artifacts, entire civilizations, magical lineages. Knowledge repositories spanning thousands of years. Subject's grievance extends beyond material loss, Great Sage observed. Emotional components suggest deeper cultural and historical attachments to destroyed collections. I apologize for my role in those events. Didraig's voice emerged from Issei without his conscious permission. The battle frenzy of those days consumed rational thought. We became destruction incarnate, Albion and I. Tiamat's expression hardened momentarily before softening into something more complex. After countless millennia, that might be the first genuine apology I've received from you, Red One. She studied Issei with renewed interest. Your unusual host appears to be having a moderating influence. Integration with analytical consciousness promotes objective historical assessment, Great Sage commented internally. Host physiology facilitates emotional processing unavailable in conventional sealed state. Issei regained vocal control as Didraig receded. I understand your historical grievance better now. Thank you for sharing that memory. Tiamat nodded slightly. Understanding facilitates cooperation, despite lingering resentments. She set her glass aside. Which brings us to the present circumstances and your unique position among various factions. Her expression grew more serious. Your meetings with both Devi heiresses at that school haven't gone unnoticed. Nor has your encounter with the stray Nekomata. Word spreads quickly in supernatural circles about unusual entities, particularly those displaying unprecedented abilities. I've been gathering information from various sources, Issei acknowledged. Each faction seems to offer different perspectives and knowledge. A pragmatic approach, Tiamat agreed, though not without risk. Supernatural politics operates on ancient grudges and complex alliances. The three factions particularly, angels, fallen angels, and devils, maintain uneasy peace after millennia of warfare. She leaned forward slightly. Your emergence as an unclassified entity with both dragon and unique absorption capabilities will draw increasing attention. The fallen angel WHO attacked you was merely the first wave. You expect more direct approaches? Issei asked. Tiamat's smile held little humor. Inevitable. Your ability to absorb attacks makes you valuable as both potential ally and concerning threat. Factions will escalate their recruitment or elimination efforts accordingly. As if summoned by her warning, Great Sage suddenly issued an alert. Unknown energy. Signature approaching mansion perimeter. Classification. Angel type, extremely powerful. Defensive magic activating throughout structure. Tiamat straightened, her casual demeanor instantly replaced with predatory awareness. Interesting timing. It seems Heaven's representatives have arrived sooner than anticipated. She rose fluidly, her formal gown shimmering into battle attire, a blue-scaled armor that materialized directly over her skin. Remain here. I'll address this intrusion. Before she could leave, the air in the center of the room shimmered with golden light, coalescing into a perfect circle of intricate symbols. Power radiated from the manifestation, distinctly different from both draconic and devil energies Issei had previously encountered. Teleportation magic bypassing territorial wards, Great Sage warned. Classification. Seraphim-level angelic manifestation. Threat assessment. Extreme. Impressive boundary penetration. Tiamat acknowledged, her voice carrying Nurse undertones despite her outwardly calm expression. Few beings can breach a Dragon King's territory without invitation. From the golden circle emerged a woman of breathtaking beauty, tall and graceful with flowing golden hair that seemed to emit its own gentle light. 12 white wings extended from her back, their span somehow fitting within the room despite physical impossibility. Her MPLE white gown radiated purity that made even the air seem cleaner in her presence. "Forgive the intrusion, Chaos Karma Dragon," the angel said, her voice like perfect music. "I come under diplomatic protocol rather than hostile intent." Her gaze shifted to Issei, brilliant blue eyes assessing him with ancient intelligence. "I sought the unusual entity whose emergence has disturbed established patterns, and found him in unexpected company." Angel entity identified, Great Sage reported. Matching against mythological records. Gabriel, Seraphim class angel, strength of God, messenger of heaven. Power classification. SS+. Capabilities include reality manipulation, holy element generation, and dimensional traversal. Tiamat's posture remained combat-ready despite her conversational tone. "Gabriel of the Seraphim, your presence here violates several treaty provisions regarding territorial sovereignty." Gabriel inclined her head slightly. "Technical violations acknowledged. However, emergence of an unclassified entity with unprecedented abilities constitutes an exceptional circumstance under Treaty of Kuo Amendments, Section 7. Her focus returned to Issei. "You've created quite the stir, young one. An entity simultaneously human, draconic, and something else entirely, absorbing attacks that should destroy you, bypassing conventional sacred gear manifestation, and now exchanging knowledge with a Dragon King." She smiled, the expression radiating genuine warmth despite the tension in the room. "Heaven has questions, understandably." Issei studied her carefully, noting that beneath her seraphic manifestation lay keen intelligence and subtle strength. Despite her gentle appearance, Great Sage assessed her combat capabilities as potentially exceeding even Tiamat's in certain contexts. "I seem to be having that effect on various factions," Issei replied diplomatically. "Though most have introduced themselves under less dramatic circumstances." Gabriel's laughter sounded like perfect wind chimes. "A fair criticism. Formal protocols would have been preferable, but recent events suggested time constraints might apply." She gestured toward Tiamat. "When a Dragon King suspends ancient grudges to mentor an emerging power, attention must be paid." Subject indicating extensive surveillance network, Great Sage noted. Knowledge of Tiamat interaction STS Heaven monitoring supernatural activity throughout region with significant detail capacity. Tiamat's armored scales clinked softly as she shifted position. "Heaven's interest is noted. Now state your purpose directly, Seraphim, or I shall consider this continued territorial violation an act of aggression." Gabriel's expression remained serenely untroubled by the threat. "Peace, Tiamat. Me merely to extend Heaven's formal acknowledgement of Issei Hyodo as an independent supernatural entity with diplomatic status." She produced a small golden tablet from thin air, inscribed with symbols that shifted and moved across its surface. "This grants you recognized standing among supernatural factions, including rites of passage, communication privileges, and protection under neutrality protocols. Analysis indicates legitimate diplomatic credential," Great Sage confirmed. "Magical properties suggest divine authentication protocols. Strategic value. Significant for cross-faction navigation." "That's unusually generous," Issei observed, making no move to accept the offered tablet. "What does Heaven want in exchange?" Gabriel's smile widened slightly with what appeared to be approval. "Direct and perceptive. Heaven seeks stability above all else, Issei Hyodo. Your emergence represents a potential wild card in delicate factional balance." She held the tablet out more deliberately. "By acknowledging your independent status, we prevent precipitous action by other factions who might otherwise attempt to force your allegiance or eliminate perceived threats. This benefits us all, while simultaneously positioning Heaven as your first formal diplomatic contact," Tiamat added dryly. "A subtle political maneuver worthy of Michael himself." Subject's offer contains significant advantages despite political positioning, Great Sage assessed. Diplomatic recognition would establish protection against unprovoked aggression under supernatural treaties. Recommendation: cautious acceptance with awareness of implicit obligations. Issei accepted the tablet, which felt unexpectedly warm against his palm. Thank you for heaven's acknowledgement. I hope to maintain peace. Full relations with all factions while I continue learning about this world I've found myself part of. Gabriel nodded, her expression subtly shifting to something more formal. Heaven recognizes Issei Hyodo as an independent entity of significant capability, neither human nor conventional sacred gear wielder, possessing unique properties worthy of diplomatic status. As she spoke, the tablet briefly glowed brighter, its inscriptions flowing more rapidly before settling into a fixed pattern. The acknowledgement is now registered across dimensional boundaries. Other factions will receive formal notification through established channels. Her wings folded slightly as her posture relaxed. Now that official business is concluded, I admit personal curiosity about your nature. The report's described abilities outside our established classification systems. Heaven's intelligence network appears quite thorough, Issei noted carefully. Gabriel's expression remained open despite the implied question. We maintain awareness of significant supernatural activities, particularly those involving potential sacred gear evolution. Your encounter with the fallen angel Rainer triggered several monitoring systems. Angel subject deliberately revealing surveillance capabilities, Great Sage observed. Psychological assessment suggests transparency strategy to establish trust framework. Tiamat finally relaxed her combat stance, though her armor remained manifested. Since Heaven has insisted on joining our discussion, perhaps we should continue more comfortably. She gestured, and the room reconfigured itself, the intimate seating arrangement expanding to accommodate 3 participants with appropriate distance. As they settled into this new arrangement, Gabriel studied Issei with undisguised fascination. You contain the Welsh dragon, yet your energy patterns show integration rather than containment. How did this occur? I'm still discovering that myself, Issei replied honestly. My unusual physiology seems to have dissolved conventional sacred gear boundaries, allowing Ddrake's power to permeate my entire system rather than manifesting as the traditional boosted gear. Gabriel nodded thoughtfully. Sacred gears occasionally evolve based on their wielder's unique qualities, though never quite like this. The system was designed with specific parameters that your existence seems to have reinterpreted. Quote, system designed by biblical God, Great Sage noted, connecting previously gathered information. Subject's reference suggests detailed knowledge of fundamental creation mechanics. That's an interesting choice of words, Issei observed. Reinterpreted rather than violated. Gabriel's smile contained genuine appreciation. Precisely. You haven't broken the system so much as found an implementation path its creator may not have anticipated. She leaned forward slightly. Which makes you fascinating rather than heretical from Heaven's perspective. Tiamat made a sound suspiciously like a snort. Heaven redefining orthodoxy to accommodate anomalies. How progressive. Gabriel accepted the barb with graceful equanimity. Evolution of understanding is necessary for any system that hopes to endure. Rigidity leads to fracture. She returned her attention to Issei. Your ability to absorb various energy types particularly interests us. Such capabilities could potentially stabilize rather than escalate conflicts. You're suggesting defensive applications, Issei noted. Among others, Gabriel acknowledged. Conversion of destructive energies, rather than merely opposing force with force offers paradigms worth exploring. The conversation continued for another hour, with Gabriel asking insightful questions about Issei's abilities while carefully avoiding requests for demonstrations or specific parameters. Unlike the Devil's recruitment approach or Tiamat's scientific curiosity, Heaven's representative seemed primarily concerned with how his existence might affect larger supernatural equilibrium. As their discussion concluded, Gabriel rose with fluid grace. Thank you for your patience with my unannounced arrival. Heaven will maintain respectful distance while you continue your development, though we hope you'll consider us a resource for information regarding divine energy systems. She produced a small feather that gleamed with inner light. Should you need to communicate with Heaven directly, this will establish a connection to my personal office. Subject offering direct communication channel to Seraphim-level entity, Great Sage analyzed. Unprecedented access for unaffiliated individual. Strategic value. Exceptional. Issei accepted the feather, which felt impossibly light yet radiated substantial power. Thank you for heaven's consideration. Gabriel turned toward Tiamat with a respectful inclination of her head. Chaos Karma Dragon, heaven acknowledges your territorial sovereignty and thanks you for your forbearance regarding this necessary intervention. Tiamat's expression remained carefully neutral. Acknowledged, Seraphim, though future visits should follow conventional notification protocols. With a final smile that somehow included both of them equally, Gabriel stepped back into her golden circle, which flared brilliantly before collapsing into nothingness, taking her with it. The moment she vanished, Tiamat's armor dissolved back into her elegant gown. Well, she said dryly, that was unexpected yet informative. She seemed genuinely interested in peaceful integration rather than recruitment or control. Issei observed, studying the golden tablet and feather he'd been given. Angels generally prefer stability to conquest, Tiamat agreed, resuming her seat. Though don't I stake diplomatic recognition for disinterest. Heaven has merely chosen a more subtle approach than the devil's direct recruitment attempts. She gestured toward the items Gabriel had provided. Those artifacts represent significant concessions. Independent diplomatic status is rarely granted to emerging entities without extended observation. Subject's assessment accurate, Great Sage confirmed. Historical records indicate typical diplomatic recognition process requires decades of demonstrated significance. Accelerated acknowledgement suggests exceptional interest in host's capabilities. The question becomes why. Tiamat continued, tapping one finger thoughtfully against her armrest. Heaven doesn't act precipitously without specific motivation. Something about your particular ability ties has triggered unusual response protocols. Absorption capabilities present unique strategic applications, Great Sage theorized. Potential for energy conversion rather than destruction aligns with Heaven's stated preference for stability. Issei nodded slightly. The tablet will provide practical benefits regardless of their motivation. Diplomatic recognition should reduce random attacks from minor factions, at minimum. A pragmatic assessment, Tiamat approved. She rose again, indicating their session was concluding. We've covered significant ground today, both in draconic principles and faction politics. I suggest you process this information before we continue with more advanced concepts. As Issei prepared to depart, she added, one final observation, 3 distinct major factions have now made direct contact. Devils through their school representatives, Heaven through Gabriel's intervention, and dragons through my own interest. Only the fallen angels and yokai remain among significant powers yet to establish formal communication. The Nekomata Kuroka approached me recently, Issei informed her. Though she presented herself as independent rather than representing yokai leadership. Tiamat's eyebrows rose slightly. The SS class stray. Interesting. Her skills in senjutsu are reportedly exceptional, though her status as devil fugitive complicates potential association. She walked him to the mansion's entrance, which now opened onto a different location than where he had entered, a secluded park several kilometers from his home. Consider carefully which influences you incorporate into your developing abilities. Each faction's knowledge comes with philosophical frameworks that may affect your evolution in subtle ways. I'll maintain balance in my approach, Issei assured her. Tiamat nodded approvingly. Wisdom beyond your years. Return in 3 days for our next session. I'll prepare materials on dimensional manipulation principles, which should complement your unique physiology's potential. As Issei walked home through the quiet evening streets, Great Sage continued processing the significant information they had gathered. Dragon Energy principles alone would require substantial integration time, not to mention the political implications of Heaven's unexpected diplomatic recognition. Prediction. Accelerated faction interest following Heaven's formal acknowledgement. Great Sage noted, probability of fallen angel response within 48 hours, 87.6%. Recommendation. Prepare defensive protocols for potential confrontation. Gabriel's intervention changes the dynamics significantly, Diedrag added, having remained silent during most of the interaction with Heaven's representative. Formal diplomatic recognition places you outside standard recruitment protocols, which some factions may find frustrating. Issei nodded slightly as he walked, organizing his thoughts around these observations. We need to establish clear boundaries with each faction, accepting knowledge and limited cooperation without surrendering independence. As he turned onto a quiet residential street, Great Sage suddenly issued an alert: multiple energy signatures detected converging on current position. Classification: Fallen Angel Combat Squad, 6 entities. Formation suggests coordinated interception rather than random encounter. Issei immediately extended his senses, confirming what Great Sage had detected. 6 distinct auras approached from different directions, their movement patterns indicating professional tactical coordination rather than Rainer's solo ambush attempt. Threat assessment: Significant, Great Sage continued. Power signatures individually exceed Rainer by approximately 43%, with complementary specializations suggesting experienced combat unit. They're not being subtle, Diedrag observed. This is a deliberate show of force rather than assassination attempt. They want you to know they're coming. Issei Conti, nude, walking at a steady pace while preparing multiple defensive options. After his encounters with Tiamat and Gabriel, he had significantly better understanding of energy manipulation principles, though practical application remained limited by experience. Absorption protocols reconfigured based on Tiamat's draconic energy lessons, Great Sage reported. Estimated efficiency improvement: 12.4% for light-based attacks. Recommend primary strategy of energy capture rather than conventional combat. The fallen angels made their move with theatrical precision. 6 black-winged figures descended simultaneously from different angles, landing in a perfect hexagonal formation around Issei. Unlike Rainer's revealing outfit, these angels wore military-style uniforms in charcoal gray with silver insignia indicating rank and specialization. Their leader stepped forward, a tall man with aristocratic features and 4 wings rather than the standard 2. Issei Hyodo, he addressed formally, I am Satanel, Lieutenant Commander of the Grigori's Special Operations Division. We request your immediate presence for consultation with Governor General Azazel regarding recent events. Request phrasing belied by tactical deployment. Great Sage noted. Subject employing diplomatic terminology while implementing clear containment formation. Assessment: Prepared for both peaceful compliance and forceful acquisition. That's an interesting way to phrase an ambush, Lieutenant Commander, Issei replied calmly, maintaining awareness of all 6 opponents simultaneously. Most consultation invitations don't involve military formations. Satanel's expression remained professionally neutral. Recent interactions with a Dragon King and Heaven's Seraphim suggested conventional approaches might be overlooked. We chose to ensure our invitation received appropriate attention. Subject possesses accurate intelligence on recent meetings, Great Sage observed. Timeline indicates active serve, Ilan's network comparable to Heaven's monitoring systems. I appreciate the Grigori's interest, Issei responded diplomatically, but I've already had a full schedule of faction meetings today. Perhaps we could arrange a more conventional appointment for tomorrow. Satanel's eyes narrowed slightly, the only indication that Issei's counter-proposal displeased him. Governor General Azazel specifically requested immediate consultation. Recent diplomatic recognition by Heaven has created certain, time-sensitive considerations. They're responding directly to Gabriel's acknowledgement, Diedrag noted. The fallen angels fear losing strategic positioning if they don't establish formal contact quickly. Issei remained outwardly relaxed despite the tension building around him. I understand time sensitivity, but diplomatic protocol typically involves advanced communication rather than interception teams, particularly with recently recognized independent entities. He deliberately removed Gabriel's tablet from his pocket, allowing its golden glow to illuminate the darkening street. Perhaps your intelligence briefing included this development. Satanel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Heaven's unilateral action has complicated established procedures. We are adjusting accordingly. By surrounding me with a combat team, Issei asked mildly. One of the other fallen angels, a woman with copper-red hair and an impatient expression, stepped forward slightly. This diplomatic posturing wastes time, Commander. The target clearly refuses voluntary compliance. Recommend immediate extraction as per secondary protocols. Secondary asset fallen angel generating confrontational escalation, Great Sage warned. Tactical assessment: Deliberately attempting to provoke hostilities. Probability of coordinated strategy: 92.3%. Stand down, Tamiel, Satanel ordered sharply. We operate under diplomatic parameters unless otherwise instructed. He returned his attention to Issei. Your concerns regarding our approach are noted. However, Governor Azazel's request remains active. We are authorized to provide safe transport and guarantee your unharmed return following consultation. I'm detecting a pattern with fallen angels, Issei observed. First Rainer attempts assassination disguised as a date, now a military team attempts abduction disguised as an invitation. Your faction's communication strategies seem consistently problematic. The comment struck a nerve. Satinel's professional demeanor cracked slightly, revealing genuine irritation. Rainer acted without authorization, pursuing incorrect intelligence. Her actions were disavowed and she has been appropriately disciplined. Subject displaying defensive response to organizational criticism, Great Sage noted. Psychological pressure point identified. Professional reputation and command integrity. Issei decided to leverage this vulnerability. Yet here you are, employing similarly questionable tactics despite claiming greater authority. It doesn't inspire confidence in the Grigori's diplomatic credibility. The strategy worked. Satinel's wings rustled with poorly concealed agitation. Oh, her approach reflects necessary security protocols when dealing with entities of unknown capability. Governor Azazel himself authorized this contact method. Then perhaps the governor should reconsider his authorization procedures. Issei suggested calmly. Diplomatic recognition by heaven establishes certain expectations regarding interaction protocols. Before Satinel could respond, Tamiel's patience evidently expired. Enough, she snarled, light spears materializing in both hands. The target manipulates you with words while our window closes. The governor wants answers about his ability. Wise, let's provide them through demonstration rather than conversation. Imminent hostility detected, Great Sage warned. Subject preparing attack contrary to command structure. Recommendation. DEFA. NSIVE absorption rather than counterattack to maintain diplomatic high ground. In a blur of motion, Tamiel launched both spears directly at Issei. Rather than dodging, he stood his ground, activating. G-Predator threw out his torso as the weapons struck him simultaneously. His body momentarily shifted to a translucent blue-green state where the spears made contact, absorbing their energy with sign. I-Fi Cantley greater efficiency than during Rainer's attack. Light element successfully captured, Great Sage confirmed. Absorption efficiency. 76.3%, representing 31.7% improvement from previous encounter. Energy conversion processing at optimal parameters. The spears disappeared into Issei's body without leaving a mark, their considerable power now flowing through his internal energy pathways for analysis and potential replication. The fallen angels' formation tensed collectively, hands moving toward weapons as they processed what they had witnessed. Stand down, Satinel thundered, his voice carrying supernatural authority that visibly impacted his subordinates. This is exactly why we approach diplomatically first. He turned back to Issei, professional mask now completely replaced with genuine concern. You absorbed Tamiel's attack completely. That's unprecedented. Subject reassessing threat classification, Great Sage noted. Current psychological analysis indicates SHIFT from attempted intimidation to genuine caution. As I tried explaining to Rainer, Issei replied calmly, I'm not what any of you seem to expect. Which is why proper diplomatic channels would be more productive than these confrontational approaches. He extended his hand, palm up, where a small light spear formed, roughly half the size of what Tamiel had thrown but distinctly similar in composition. I can absorb and potentially replicate various energy types I encounter. Your subordinate has just provided an excellent sample for analysis. The demonstration created exactly the impact Issei had intended. The fallen angels' formation subtly shifted from offensive containment to defensive distancing, their collective assessment of the situation visibly changing. Governor Azazel WILL find this information extremely interesting, Satinel said after a moment of tense silence. Your ability appears similar to certain sacred gear functions he's researched extensively. I'd be PPY to discuss theoretical similarities with the governor, Issei replied, allowing the miniature light spear to dissipate. Through properly scheduled channels with appropriate diplomatic protocols. Satinel studied him for several seconds before nodding once, decisively. Understood. I will convey your preference for formal communication protocols to Governor Azazel, along with demonstration D. Auto regarding your absorption capabilities. He reached into his uniform and produced a black business card with silver text. This contains direct communication frequencies for Grigori Diplomatic Corps. When you're prepared for consultation, this will establish appropriate connections. Subject implementing strategic withdrawal while maintaining professional dignity, Great Sage observed. Meant. Tactical retreat prioritizing information acquisition over forced compliance. Issei accepted the card with appropriate gravity. Please inform Governor Azazel that I welcome knowledge exchange. NGE with the Grigori under mutually respectful conditions. His research into sacred gears may indeed provide valuable insights into my own development. Satinel nodded again before turning to his team. Mission parameters adjusted. We have completed primary information acquisition objective. Withdraw to designated extraction point. The copper-haired Tamil appeared ready to protest but ultimately complied with the order, shooting Issei a venomous glare before launching herself skyward. The others followed in practiced formation, with Satinel departing last after a final assessing look at Issei. Once alone, Issei exhaled slowly, processing the encounter with both Great Sage and Didrake. 4 major factions have now made direct contact, each with distinctly different approaches. Len Angel's information gathering prioritized over immediate recruitment, Great Sage noted. Tactical adjustment suggests genuine interest in absorption capabilities rather than mere territorial positioning. Azazel has always been fascinated by sacred gears, Didrake added. Your unique implementation would naturally capture his scientific curiosity, similar to Tiamat's interest but with more technological focus. Issei resumed his walk home, now carrying contact mechanisms for 4 separate supernatural factions: Rias's magical circle, Sona's familiar connection, Gabriel's feather, and now the Grigori's communication card. Only formal yokai leadership remained unrepresented among major powers. Schedule optimization increasingly complex, Great Sage observed. Multiple faction interact. Tions require careful balancing to maintain independence while maximizing knowledge acquisition. We prioritize based on knowledge value rather than political positioning, Issei decided as he approached his neighborhood. Tiamat's draconic energy principles provide immediate practical applications. Kuroka's senjutsu training offers complementary techniques. The other factions can proceed at diplomatic pace. As he reached his street, Great Sage issued another alert. Though distinctly different from previous warnings, anomalous dimensional disturbance detected within host residence. Classification: unknown but consistent with extreme spatial manipulation. Signature unlike previously encountered entities. Issei approached his home cautiously, extending his senses to evaluate this new development. His parents' car was missing. They had mentioned dinner with colleagues earlier, but lights glowed within the house despite what should have been an empty building. Energy pattern assessment inconclusive, Great Sage reported. Magnitude suggests entity of extreme capability, potentially exceeding Dragon King classification. Dimensional properties indicate possible connection to concept. TS outside conventional reality framework. Proceed with maximum caution, Didrake advised, his mental voice unusually tense. Few beings manipulate dimensional boundaries at this level. Those that typically possess power beyond conventional classification systems. Issei entered his home with deliberate calm, senses extended to their maximum capacity. Nothing appeared immediately unusual until he reached the living room, where reality itself seemed to bend subtly around a small figure sitting casually on the sofa. She appeared as a young girl, perhaps 12 years old, with long black hair and emotionless eyes that contained swirling galaxies of purple and black. Her gothic Lolita dress seemed simultaneously mundane and impossible, its patterns shifting subtly when viewed from different angles. Most distinctive was the sense of infinite depth surrounding her, as though she existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, with only a fragment of her true nature visible in conventional space. Issei Hyodo, she stated, her voice carrying harmonic overtones that resonated at multiple frequencies simultaneously. You have created ripples in the dimensional fabric through your unusual existence. Entity exceeds all previous classification parameters, Great Sage reported with what almost sounded like awe. Energy signature contains infinite regression patterns. Probability assessment. Dragon God class entity. Matching against mythological records. Ophis, the Ouroboros dragon, infinite dragon god. The identification sent Didrake into immediate alertness. Ophis, he confirmed with undisguised respect. The Dragon of Infinity. Her presence here is significant beyond ordinary politics. Issei maintained outward composure despite the extraordinary nature of his visitor. I'm honored by your presence. Though conventional introductions typically precede home visits, the girl's expression remained unchanging, though something like curiosity flickered in the depths of her impossible eyes. Conventional parameters do not apply to our interaction. Your hybrid existence operates outside standard classification boundaries, as does my own nature. She tilted her head slightly, the movement creating subtle distortions in the air around her. Your body contains elements of dragon, human, and something fluid that dissolves boundaries between defined states. This interests me. Subject's interest appears genuinely analytical rather than territorial or political, Great Sage observed. Assessment. Scientific curiosity similar to Tiamat's but focused specifica. LLY on dimensional properties rather than general capabilities. May I ask why my particular nature interests someone of your significance? Issei inquired politely. Ophis studied him with unblinking focus. I seek silence in the dimensional gap. The Great Red's presence creates noise I wish to eliminate. Your boundary-dissolving properties may offer applicable principles for my objective. She rose from the sofa, her movement creating ripples in reality itself. Though physically small, her presence filled the room with infinite potential. You absorb and integrate various energy types, incorporating their properties into your evolving system. This process mirrors certain dimensional manipulation principles I employ. Without warning, she extended one small hand, from which emerged a swirling sphere of pure darkness that somehow contained pinpoints of light like distant stars. Observe. Before Issei could respond, she pressed the sphere against his chest. Unlike previous energy contacts, this power didn't impact his physical form but seemed to bypass it entirely, connecting directly with something deeper in his existence. Dimensional energy integrating directly with conceptual framework, Great Sage reported. Analytical processes accelerating to unprecedented speeds. Properties bypass physical absorption systems, connecting with fundamental identity structures. Classification. Infinite regression energy with reality definition properties. The sensation defied description, neither painful nor pleasant but fundamentally transformative, as though previously invisible. Aspects of reality suddenly became perceptible. Issei felt his awareness expanding beyond conventional dimensions, briefly touching conceptual frameworks that existed perpendicular to normal space-time. When the connection ended, Ophis withdrew her hand, studying him with slightly increased interest. Your system adapts efficiently to dimensional input. Boundary dissolution proceeds along optimal integration pathways. Fascinating. What did you do? Issei asked, feeling subtle changes continuing to propagate throughout his awareness. I provided dimensional consciousness expansion, she explained matter-of-factly. Your perception now includes rudimentary awareness of spaces between conventional reality planes. This will facilitate our future discussions regarding boundary manipulation principles. Subject has unilaterally enhanced host's perceptual capabilities, Great Sage noted, still processing the significant changes. Modification appears beneficial rather than harmful. Huff long-term implications require further analysis. Future discussions. Issei questioned, focusing on her presumptive phrasing. Ophis nodded once, the gesture oddly formal. Your development trajectory intersects with my objectives regarding dimensional boundary manipulation. I will observe your progression and provide relevant input at appropriate intervals. She turned away, beginning fade from conventional reality even before completing the movement. Continue your information gathering from lesser entities. Their perspectives, while limited, provide necessary contextual framework. RKS for understanding multidimensional principles. Wait, Issei called, causing her to pause mid-dissolution. What exactly do you want from me ultimately? Ophis regarded him with those infinite eyes. Want. I seek understanding of how your boundary-dissolving properties might apply to my conflict with Great Red. You represent an unexpected evolutionary path that creates new possibilities regarding dimensional segregation and integration. Without further explanation, she completed her disappearance, reality closing seamlessly behind her as though she had never been present. Issei stood motionless for several minutes, processing what had just occurred with both Great Sage and Drake. The dragon god's brief interaction had fundamentally altered his perception in ways that would require significant adjustment. Dragon god intervention unprecedented in recent millennia, Diedrag finally commented. Ophis rarely takes interest in individual entities below Dragon King classification. Analysis of dimensional awareness expansion continuing, Great Sage reported. Preliminary assessment indicates 237% increase in spatial perception capabilities. Host can now consciously detect dimensional boundaries previously imperceptible to baseline senses. Indeed, Issei could now perceive subtle folding in reality itself, places where dimensional barriers thinned or overlapped, creating potential transition points between different planes of existence. What had previously been theoretical knowledge based on Tiamat's lessons now became directly observable phenomena. She essentially upgraded my perceptual software without asking permission, Issei observed, unsure whether to be concerned or grateful for the enhancement. Ophis operates outside conventional ethical frameworks, Diedrag explained. Concepts like permission or protocol have little meaning to an entity that exists partially outside causality itself. Enhancement appears specifically designed to facilitate future e-communication regarding dimensional manipulation, Great Sage added. Subject's interest suggests genuine belief that host's unique nature may contribute to her objectives regarding dimensional gap conflict. Issei walked carefully to the nearest window, his enhanced perception revealing subtle energy currents flowing through the evening air that had been invisible to him just minutes before. His world appeared both more complex and more interconnected, layers of reality interacting in patterns he was only beginning to comprehend. 5 major factions have now made direct contact, he noted quietly. Each with distinctly different approaches and interests. Political landscape assessment. Increasingly complex, Great Sage summarized. Devils seek recruitment, dragons pursue scientific understanding. Heaven promotes stability, fallen angels gather intelligence, and now Ophis expresses interest in dimensional applications. Your unique hybrid nature attracts attention across factional boundaries, Diedrag observed. Each entity perceives different potential applications based on their particular objectives and philosophical frameworks. Issei nodded slightly, organizing his thoughts around these observations. We maintain independence while gathering knowledge from each source, developing our capabilities without becoming instruments of any specific agenda. He turned from the window, his enhanced perception allowing him to detect residual dimensional energies where Ophis had sat, swirling patterns that would have been completely imperceptible before her intervention. Tomorrow we begin structured training with Kuroka, he decided. Senjutsu should complement these new perceptual abilities effectively, particularly regarding energy manipulation principles. The abandoned shrine stood deep in the forested mountains outside Kuo town, its weathered structures partially reclaimed by nature. Ancient protective wards still lingered around its perimeter, centuries of neglect had weakened their power considerably. For Kuroka's purposes, however, the lingering spiritual energy made it an ideal training location. The natural energy concentrates beautifully here, she explained, leading Issei through the overgrown courtyard. Her black kimono contrasted sharply with the greenery around them, while her twin tails swayed with each graceful step. Monks abandoned this place centuries ago when newer religions displaced the old ways, but the kami never truly departed. Multiple energy signatures detected throughout location, Great Sage confirmed. Classification. Minor kami and nature spirits. No hostile intent indicated. Spiritual concentration approximately 437% above urban baseline. Issei could perceive these energies far more clearly after Ophis's enhancement, seeing how they flowed through the shrine grounds in complex patterns. The energy doesn't just exist here, it moves with purpose, following specific pathways. Kuroka's golden eyes widened slightly in surprise. You can already see the energy flows. Most beginners require weeks of meditation before achieving even basic perception. She circled him with newfound curiosity, her ears twitching as she reassessed him. Your sensitivity has increased significantly since our first meeting. How interesting. Recent encounter facilitated perceptual enhancement, Issei explained without specific details. I can see energy currents but don't yet understand how to interpret or interact with them effectively. Subject demonstrating appropriate caution regarding Ophis encounter, Great Sage approved. Limited disclosure maintains strategic information control while explaining observable capability changes. Kuroka accepted the vague explanation with a knowing smile. Encounters with certain entities can indeed expand perception rather dramatically. Another advantage of your unusual constitution, perhaps. She led him to a moss-covered clearing before the main shrine building. Senjutsu begins with understanding that all energy, natural, supernatural, physical, spiritual, exists on a continuous spectrum rather than as discrete types. The boundaries humans and even most supernatural beings perceive are largely artificial constructs. She knelt gracefully on the moss, motioning for Issei to join her. Your absorption abilities already demonstrate intuitive understanding of this principle. You don't merely capture energy but convert it between states. Light becomes matter becomes force becomes concept, flowing between forms based on your need. Accurate assessment of predator fundamentals. Great Sage noted. Subject demonstrates sophisticated theoretical understanding of host's core abilities. Senjutsu will teach you to perceive and manipulate these conversions with greater precision. Kuroka continued, placing her palms on her knees in a meditative posture. Begin by synchronizing your breath with the natural energy flow beneath us. For the next several hours, she guided Issei through increasingly complex exercises, teaching him to align his internal energy with external patterns. Unlike Tiamat's highly theoretical approach or the Devil's Power-focused techniques, Senjutsu emphasized harmony and redirection rather than control and dominance. Don't force the energy to obey you, Kuroka instructed as Issei attempted to gather natural power between his palms. Instead, understand its existing flow and suggest alternative pathways. Senjutsu masters succeed through cooperation with natural forces rather than subjugation. By mid-afternoon, Issei had progressed through basic exercises to rudimentary energy redirection, creating small deviations in natural flows that passed through the clearing. His hybrid physiology adapted quickly to these new concepts, incorporating them into existing frameworks Great Sage had established. Senjutsu principles integrating effectively with absorption mechanics, Great Sage reported. GY conversion efficiency improved 8.7% through application of natural flow principles. Projected compatibility with dimensional awareness enhancement, excellent. Kuroka stretched languorously as they took a brief rest. Her movements deliberately sensual despite the serious training. You learn remarkably quickly, she observed, golden eyes studying him with scientific precision beneath her playful demeanor. Most practitioners require months to achieve what you've accomplished in hours. My analytical abilities help process and integrate new concepts efficiently, Issei explained. She nodded, ears twitching thoughtfully. That internal voice you mentioned, Great Sage, yes. It seems quite effective at translating theoretical principles into practical applications. Subject displaying significant perceptiveness regarding host's internal processes, Great Sage noted. Assessment. Intentionally demonstrating information gathering capabilities as trust-building mechanism. Great Sag. Helps organize and implement what I learn, Issei acknowledged. Though practical mastery still requires physical practice regardless of theoretical understanding. Kuroka smiled approvingly. Wisdom beyond your years. Many prodigies falter because they believe understanding equals mastery. She rose gracefully. Let's apply these principles to your unique absorption abilities. I'm curious how Senjutsu might enhance your energy processing. She manifested a sphere of yokai energy, distinct from her Senjutsu power, with properties Great Sage immediately classified as Nekomata-specific life force. Try absorbing this while implementing the flow principles we've practiced. Instead of capturing the energy, guide it through your system along natural pathways. Issei extended his hand, active, aiding Predator while simultaneously applying the Senjutsu techniques she had taught him. Instead of his usual approach of breaking down and analyzing the energy, he allowed it to maintain integrity guiding it through his system along paths of least resistance. Modified absorption protocols functioning at 112% standard efficiency, Great Sage reported with evident interest. Energy maintains coherent properties while integration proceeds with reduced resistance. Significant application potential for future encounters with complex energy types. The yokai power flowed through Issei's bow. Dye like water finding its natural course, eventually pooling in his core where Great Sage could analyze its properties without destructive breakdown. The process felt remarkably different from his STA. NDARD absorption, more harmonious and less computationally intensive. Impressive, Kuroka purred, her tail swaying with genuine excitement. You're not just capturing the energy but dancing with it. Few non-yokai ever achieve such elegant integration. She circled him again, this time with distinct scientific curiosity. Your body's unusual composition creates natural pathways where energy can flow without resistance. Combined with senjutsu principles, this could potentially revolutionize your absorption mechanics. Theoretical framework expanded significantly, Great Sage agreed. Senjutsu principles provide complementary methodology to draconic energy manipulation concepts from Tiamat's instruction. Integration of both systems yields 23.6% higher efficiency than either approach individually. The remainder of their session focused on applying these integrated principles to different energy types, with Kuroka demonstrating remarkable versatility in generating various supernatural powers for practice. Unlike the highly specialized abilities of devils or angels, yokai apparently developed broader energy manipulation capabilities through their close connection with natural forces. As afternoon faded toward evening, Kuroka finally called a halt to their training. We've accomplished more than I expected for an initial session. Your adaptability exceeds even my optimistic projections. She stretched again, making no effort to disguise how the movement emphasized her figure. Have you considered my proposal? 3 days have passed since our first meeting. Issei nodded. I'm prepared to accept a mutually beneficial arrangement. Senjutsu training in exchange for association that provides security through deterrence. Without formal subordination or faction alignment, Kuroka added quickly. Her playful demeanor momentarily replaced with serious intensity. Of course, Issei agreed. My independence remains non-negotiable across all factional relationships. Kuroka's smile returned, genuine pleasure evident in her expression. Excellent. I can continue your training 3 times weekly while maintaining my other obligations. Her golden eyes gleamed mischievously. I have various information gathering arrangements that actually complement our association nicely. Subject indicating espionage capabilities, Great Sage noted. Assessment. Operates as IND. A pendant intelligence broker among supernatural factions. Potential secondary benefit. Information access beyond formal diplomatic channels. I imagine your talents for observation extend beyond combat applications. Issei remarked carefully. Kuroka laughed, the sound surprisingly melodic. Perceptive as always. Yes, information flows through my networks from various factions. An arrangement WITHU not only provides security but enhances my value to certain interested parties. Her expression turned more serious. Speaking of which, you should be aware that your recent interactions with multiple faction leaders has created quite the stir in supernatural circles. The 3 factions are calling an emergency summit meeting specifically to discuss your emergence and potential implications. Subject possesses high-level intelligence on faction activities, Great Sage observed. Information value potentially exceeds initial assessment. A summit meeting seems excessive for one anomalous entity, Issei noted. Intentionally downplaying his interest, Kuroka's tails swayed knowingly. Under normal circumstances, perhaps. But your particular abilities, combined with Heaven's unprecedented diplomatic recognition and Ophus's apparent interest, have triggered rarely used protocols. She paused, watching his reaction carefully. Yes, I know about the dragon god's visit. Informatio. N of that magnitude travels quickly through certain channels. Impressive network reach, Great Sage acknowledged. Subject's intelligence capabilities significantly exceed previous estimates. When and where is this summit occurring? Issei asked, recognizing the valuable intelligence she was offering as demonstration of her worth as an ally. 3 days from now at Kuo Academy after hours, Kuroka replied. Neutral territory by treaty arrangement. Representatives from Heaven, Grigori, and both devil houses will attend, along with observers from several minor factions. She smiled slyly, including a certain dragon king who has taken unexpected interest in a unique hybrid entity. Tiamat will attend as dragon representative. Issei clarified. Kuroka nodded. Apparently your association with her has diplomatic implications beyond your private knowledge exchange. The dragons haven't sent formal representatives to faction summits in centuries. Subject providing exceptional intelligence value, Great Sage assessed. Information regarding summit would likely remain concealed from host despite diplomatic recognition status. Strategic value. Critical for preparation and response planning. Thank you for sharing this, Issei said with genuine appreciation. Advanced knowledge of such discussions provides significant advantage. Consider it demonstration of my value as an ally. Kuroka replied with obvious satisfaction. Independent operators like us benefit from information asymmetry when dealing with established powers. As they prepared to leave the shrine grounds, she added casually. You should also be aware that my foolish little sister has been assigned to monitor your activities by her devil master. The small white-haired girl follows you between classes, reporting your movements back to the Grimoire heiress. I had noticed her surveillance, Issei acknowledged. Though not her specific connection to you. Kuroka's expression softened momentarily. Sharon, Kaneko, as they call her now, possesses significant potential in senjutsu naturally, though she suppresses these abilities due to unfortunate associations with my departure. You want to reconnect with her, Issei observed. Golden eyes met his with surprising vulnerability. Eventually, when circumstances allow safer contact. The moment passed quickly, her playful mask returning seamlessly. For now, simply being near enough to ensure her well-being suffices. They parted at the edge of town, with Kuroka transforming into her cat form to avoid detection in more populated areas. Same time next week for our second session, she confirmed before disappearing into the shadows with supernatural grace. As Issei walked home through the early evening, Great Sage processed the substantial information they had gathered. Senjutsu principles alone would require significant integration with existing abilities, not to mention the political intelligence regarding the upcoming faction summit. Schedule optimization increasingly complex, Great Sage noted. Summit meeting occurs same day as next scheduled session with Tiamat. Recommendation. Coordinate information gathering to maximize strategic preparation. The summit presents both opportunity and risk, Didraig observed, having remained mostly silent during the senjutsu training. Being discussed by faction leaders without direct input places you at informational disadvantage, despite Kuroka's advance warning. Issei nodded slightly as he walked, organizing his thoughts around these observations. We'll accelerate our preparation schedule. Tiamat's next lesson, combined with Kuroka's senjutsu training, should provide sufficient advancement to demonstrate capability without revealing full potential if confrontation becomes necessary. As he approached home, Great Sage detected subtle energy signatures indicating magical surveillance around the perimeter. Multiple observation constructs detected near residence. Classification. Varied faction origin including Devil, Fallen Angel, and Heaven-type monitoring spells. Non-invasive information gathering rather than attack preparation. Our activities have attracted significant attention, Issei noted dryly. Diplomatic recognition apparently comes with increased monitoring. Standard protocol for entities of interest, Didraig confirmed. Though the Diver, City of Observational Spells indicates unusual multi-faction coordination. Issei passed through the surveillance perimeter without acknowledging its presence, maintaining normal behavior patterns while internally planning countermeasures. His parents remained blissfully unaware of the supernatural world expanding around their son, their ordinary human lives continuing without interruption despite the extraordinary developments occurring literally above their heads. That evening, Issei sat at his desk organizing the substantial information he had accumulated from various faction contacts. Each sage projected a complex relationship diagram into his mind, mapping connections between different supernatural entities and their apparent objectives regarding his abilities. Faction interest assessment, primarily focused on absorption and adaptive capabilities, Great Sage summarized. Devils value combat applications, dragons pursue scientific understanding, heaven emphasizes stability implications. Fallen angels seek technological applications, yokai recognize natural energy affinity, and Ophis focuses on dimensional boundary properties. Each perceives value through their own philosophical framework, Issei observed. None yet understands the full integration potential of these combined knowledge systems. He activated his communication tablet, establishing connection with Shatori's familiar, a small water spirit that materialized as a tiny humanoid figure above the magical circle. Message for Shatori Senpai, Issei instructed the familiar. Thank you for your discretion regarding faction activities. I've become aware of the upcoming summit meeting and would appreciate any additional context you might provide regarding expected discussion topics and potential outcomes. The familiar bobbed in acknowledgement before disappearing to deliver the message. Moments later, it rematerialized with Sona's response, impressive information network. Meeting agenda includes classification debate, diplomatic protocol establishment, and containment contingency discussion if deemed necessary. Recommend preparation for potential capability demonstration request. Will provide additional details during tomorrow's Student Council lunch. Subject confirms summit details while offering continued cooperation, Great Sage noted. Assessment. Genuine interest in maintaining G alliance outside formal devil hierarchy. Issei sent a brief acknowledgement before disconnecting. Sona's confirmation of containment contingency discussions validated his concerns about potential faction responses to his emergence. While diplomatic recognition provided certain protections, entities that operated outside established classification systems inevitably triggered defensive protocols from organized factions. Prepare comprehensive capability demonstration parameters, he instructed Great Sage. Sufficient to establish non-threat status while maintaining strategic information. C. Ontral regarding full integration potential. Processing request, Great Sage acknowledged. Designing demonstration protocol that balances impression management with security requirements. Primary objective. Establish beneficial non-hostility classification while preserving technological advantage. As Issei prepared for bed, his enhanced perception allowed him to detect subtle shifts in the surveillance network surrounding his home, rotational changes as different factions adjusted their monitoring positions throughout the night. The pattern suggested coordinated observation rather than competing interests. Further evidence of unusual cooperation regarding his case. They fear what they don't understand, Diedrag observed as Issei drifted toward sleep. Your hybrid nature represents both opportunity and threat to established power structures. The summit will determine whether they classify you as potential ally or containment priority. Then we ensure they reach the correct conclusion, Issei murmured, already formulating plans for the coming days. The complex game of supernatural politics continued expanding around him, each faction positioning for advantage while attempting to assess an entity that defied conventional classification. In the darkness outside, Golden Eyes watched from a nearby rooftop, their owner maintaining perfect stillness as she monitored the rotating surveillance teams with professional assessment. Kuroka's decision to ally with the unusual hybrid seemed increasingly justified as faction interest escalated beyond even her expectations. Interesting times ahead, she whispered to herself, tail swaying gently as she calculated political trajectories and potential outcomes. The emergence of an unclassified entity with unprecedented abilities had destabilized long-established power dynamics, creating opportunities for independent operators like herself to improve their positions considerably. Whatever emerged from the coming summit, the supernatural world had already changed irrevocably. Classification systems established over millennia now faced fundamental challenges from an entity that existed at the intersection of multiple paradigms, human yet not, dragon yet not, sacred gear wielder yet not. The hybrid named Issei Hyodo represented evolution itself, adapting and incorporating across boundaries previously considered impermeable. For beings as ancient as Ophis, such evolutionary leaps warranted direct intervention. For younger factions still establishing their cosmic positioning, it necessitated urgent summit meetings and contingency planning. For Kuroka, it represented the most interesting development in centuries of existence, and perhaps her best opportunity for long-term security in a world that had labeled her criminal for protecting what she loved most. The pieces continued moving across an increasingly complex game board, with Issei at the center of intersecting interests. Whether catalyst or threat, opportunity or disruption, his emergence had irreversibly altered supernatural politics. The real question remaining, was he merely responding to these changes or orchestrating them? Chapter 3 End. The End. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.